Roll call, please.
Fullerton.
Here.
Christensen.
Present.
Ginn.
Here.
Brummett. Here. Scott.
Here.
Rodriguez. Present. Newman.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have no council members absent, so we can go right to public comment. And we'll wait and ask the clerk if she sees anybody online.
Kent McDonald. Should be able to talk.
What?
You should be able to talk now.
Was it?
How are you?
McDonald.
This is Kent McDonald. I live on North Sheldon Street.
Okay, go ahead.
Wanted to address, thank you. And by the way, no video yet tonight. It's just a black screen. See if we can fix that, please. I want to address the candidates that we're going to see tonight. I've done a little bit of research. I see 3 candidates to be interviewed. 2 of those candidates seem to have spent their career in municipal services. Okay. One of these candidates is unfamiliar that you may never have met. Another one is someone we met in a previous interview session. Hopefully, they present themselves well, or as well as previously done. The third candidate is the problem that I'm coming to you to speak about. I've done research on this candidate. I find that this candidate has less than 5 years of municipal service. In that time, at least 3 jobs. That speaks to something. One of those jobs lasted 6 weeks, and this candidate voluntarily left that after communication with the personnel department. That speaks to something else, I would think. And in his most recent municipal service job, he recently received basically a C grade in his review by the commission or council in that community. That doesn't speak well to this candidate's ability to do the job. The more important thing about this third candidate is he has made a career in politics. We do not need politics running the city of Charlotte, where we've had recent incursions in the council of politics has been dealt with, I think, but it hasn't been good for the city. I want you to recognize that someone who spent 20 plus years in politics is likely to be political in this job. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
No. Nope.
Okay, we'll close the public comment. Ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second to approve the agenda as printed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. At this point, now that the meeting's open, I think the decision's been made to, unless there's big objections, is to let the consultant ask each of the candidates the questions rather than bounce around through the council, so that he's familiar with the questions and we can concentrate on the answers. And he's willing to do that.
I would make that, yeah, from the council, that's our wishes, I do believe.
That's what I thought that was the idea, was to have the consultant do that.
I can concur with that. Good plan.
Okay, so unless you have some guidance you want to give the council,
Yep, I'll just, Mr. Mayor, just some brief guidance here. So this is an open interview. These individuals have waived confidentiality at this point to make themselves fully public. They've released their resumes, all their references, information to the public, to the council for inspection so the community can review them and you can review them as well. The questions are tonight written in a way that hopefully we get an understanding of who they are, both on a personal level and on a professional level as well. We would be mindful that the city of Charlotte is an equal opportunity employer, and so there's certain questions that we will not ask and don't ask out of respect for those privacy rights as well, and I hope the public understands that. There's some things you just can't ask in an interview. And so those questions, hopefully, if there is an issue, I will just quickly say, move on to the next question. Try to protect the city with any type of liability, if that makes sense. Our first candidate tonight is Vester Davis. I'm going to go retrieve him from the mayor's office and bring him out here, if that works for you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and our department heads are here to listen,
Yes.
and then we will talk with them later on. They won't be able to ask the candidates any questions. Are you saying, I mean, when you ask the questions, are you going to finish up?
Yep.
And then you're not going to open the floor up?
It depends on however you want to do it, sir.
So how do we want to signal that somebody has a specific question that
At the very end, it'll say follow-up questions.
bypass somebody if you really got something that they didn't answer? But we don't want to get unfair to other candidates, so just give me ideas.
So are you wanting us to ask a follow-up to the question while they're on it, or waiting till the end to ask?
That would be up to him. Answer that, however.
You can simply just put up your hand if you have a follow-up.
Okay, so at
It's a
the moment,
follow-up during the question he asked.
Yep. I want to make this as informal as possible so it flows naturally. If you got a burning question, just pop your hand up, someone give me a nudge, and we can stop and have a follow-up.
good.
Just want to be mindful of time.
I've been through this process a couple times, as you guys know, and so for the council members that are new up here, the candidates usually do a great job at covering all of it anyways. So I don't imagine it'll be a constant problem.
No.
Before we get started, I just wonder if someone can verify that we have good sound and we have good screen to folks that are watching online before we start this.
We're still having issues with Zoom, but we have YouTube and Facebook up.
Okay, so YouTube and Facebook is good? Okay.
Yeah, I do have a very general parks question for all three candidates that I would like to ask, just to hear their responses and how they respond.
Okay. Right towards the end,
Yeah.
at the very end, there's a follow-up question, so that'd be a great time to answer that. Okay.
He'll be actually running the show.
Yep.
From the time he brings them in until and we'll take a break between each candidate of 5 minutes or something to stretch, walk around, see what the department heads think. You can get information from them during that time, so, okay?
Right.
All right.
Hello.
Kurt Scott. Nice to meet you.
Joe Chin.
Good to meet you. Anthony Rodriguez.
Good seeing you again. Good evening, Vester. Thanks for being here tonight. The mayor and council are very appreciative of it. There's a fresh bottle of water there. I would say drink responsibly, because we're going to share that with all three candidates. So there's one bottle for all three of you tonight. So you're the first. Yeah, you're the first one to drink out of it. Tonight I'll be asking the questions. The mayor and council may interrupt with some follow-up questions. This could be pretty casual as we go through this. So enjoy the process and have fun tonight. Okay? We really appreciate you being here. All right. So. Mr. Davis, the mayor and council have had the opportunity to do an initial review and assessment of you based on the resume and your responses to the candidate questionnaire, and thank you for filling that out so quickly. We would like to learn more about you as an individual. Give us a sense of who you are from a personal perspective.
No.
Tiger, can you come with us?
One hand, please.
There's one now, okay.
Congratulations, Mr. Davis. You passed test number 1.
Yeah, check the technology, right?
There you go.
Well, thank you all for inviting me to this process. As who I am, Vester Davis, a father of three boys, wife, and now a new dog. So it's a little bit of the personal. As far as the educational background, graduate of Grand Valley State University twice. So they're getting all of my money as I pay back student loans. Graduated with a degree in public administration, as well as a master's in public administration from Grand Valley State University. So, born and raised from Grand Rapids, Michigan. So as you can see, I can't get away from the west side of Michigan for some odd reason. I've been in local government for a little bit over 10 years now. Started out with the city of Grand Haven as an intern, stuck around for a couple more years, became assistant to the city manager. And then after getting to get my feet wet in local government, I moved up to Stanton, Michigan. Was there for about 2.5 years. Wore many different hats and had really good success. I think working with the council there and the staff members there, and stretching the capabilities of the staff that I had. We accomplished a lot of great projects, and that kind of building off of the success of the previous city manager who was there. After about 2.5 years, you wanted to do a stepping stone in your career process. And so I came back downstate to the city of Springfield for about 4 years. We had tons of success. Many great projects were accomplished. And as you know, then you become a city manager and you say, hey, the show's over here. And, I took a little bit of a sabbatical, if you will, and went over to the city of Hastings, served as a special projects manager, working alongside the city manager there, who had just lost their public works director and said, hey, I got some projects here for you to work on. Are you available? Did that for about 5 6 months, and then wrapped that up and was appointed the interim superintendent for the Texas Township, which is down in Kalamazoo County. Just wrapping that time period up. Had a lot of success keeping projects going. Wasn't really familiar with the process as it relates to township government, so I had a quick learning curve to understand how things operate, and we've had some success there as well. So at this point in time, now I'm back on the hunt for the next local government opportunity.
Excellent, thank you. What prompted your decision to leave your current place of employment? I think you answered a little bit. Or look for an alternative position, and why did you choose to apply to be Charlotte's next city manager?
A few different reasons, actually. As I mentioned, you're kind of winding down things as being a contracted employee with Texas Township, and understanding it was an interim assignment. But I wanted to get back into city government. That's where, I've had the most experience and the most familiar to me. As far as it relates to Charlotte, I've been watching Charlotte from a distance for a number of years. As you know, the city of Charlotte is close to Lansing, and so you get familiar driving up and through the city, making some stops here for lunch, and also knowing some of the past managers that you all have had, and so building relationships with those individuals and learning a little bit more from a distance about Charlotte. At this point in time, it is in a 30-minute drive from where I currently reside with my family and with my boys who are in school and whatnot. And so you always look for the opportunity, like when is that going to come up and what's going on. You all are in close proximity, as I mentioned, to Lansing. So, you see, read the headlines and you read the articles and just keeping abreast from a distance as to what's taking place here in the city of Charlotte. And there's a lot of great things. You all have a really nice downtown, quaint downtown, really nice neighborhoods as I drove around today. And just always been, keeping an eye on things from a distance.
What are your impressions about the challenges and possibilities in the city of Charlotte?
It's a really good question, but thank you. I think like I said, mentioning from a distance, just evaluating, how the board is working. I think that's things have been getting kind of settled down as I did some research and watching some of the past meetings that have taken place, and just seeing how people are out working together. But also just knowing the history a little bit more. I took an in-depth look at the city, and I think just now that things are getting settled down, it's like, how do we move on? How do we move forward as a together, togetherness and good representation to the neighborhoods, the community, and to the larger aspect, I think, to the state of Michigan. How do we move forward from the past couple of years of politics and a lot of the turnover? I think that was number one. And then number two is, just keeping it downtown vibrant. What's next? Working closely with the DDA. You all are one of the few cities that has a traditional downtown. And so as you drive through, it's like, man, it's pretty clean. It's really taken care of. And, just want to make sure that that's going to continue on as we look through the budgetary numbers. I think that's been one of the aspects that's been stressed from this particular group is transparency, making sure that we are doing our best to publicize, what's taking place, the communication with the constituents. I think that's been another area that, I noted was of importance, to this body.
What is the most important task or function of a city manager and why?
I think there are many. Wearing the many hats, keeping the council abreast, being that go in between, what's happening at the department level, what are the needs and the wants of the residents, having a pulse on what's happening within the community, being visible, and being accessible. Can people reach you when they need to? Providing good leadership, but also working and promoting your staff and what they bring to the table, and giving them the opportunity to grow in their roles. So being supportive, and I think also, as a city manager, just being the constant, of service delivery, making sure that we're offering great quality services. Also looking into the crystal ball and thinking ahead a little bit as well. Being innovative with what the resources that you do have as a city manager, but also looking a little bit further down the road and providing a vision for not only the staff, but sharing that vision with the elected officials as to what you see as being next, for them to kind of focus on and look on as it relates to operations.
Can you please give examples of how you have worked to collaborate with elected municipal leaders in your previous or current role?
That's a great question, James. I think having a strategic plan in place, sitting down with the council and talking about what you're learning from the staff level, what they're seeing in their roles, and then communicating that to the elected officials and having that strategic focus on, there are many things that each one of you all have, your own ideas of what you think is best for the city, but can we coalesce around, small, attainable goals, maybe 5 to 10 goals that we can really focus on, and achievable goals, within a year's time or so. But I think having that discussion early on really sets the expectations not only for the city manager, but also for department heads and for the city council, for you all to, to come together on and say, this is what our focus is on, and then projecting that to the residents when you go out into the community. And then all together, that gives a sense of they're working together, everyone's swimming in the right direction, and we are going to have much success working together. So having that discussion early on really, sets the stage, and then giving the updates as we go along on how we're making progress, how are we tracking, what else we can do to show our success. So nonetheless, I think that we, having that discussion, being on the same page, and making sure the communication is there where you all can, we're on the same page and not on different pages, if that makes sense.
As city manager of Charlotte, what groups would you expect to communicate with on a regular basis? And what would you do to establish and keep channels of communication open?
That's where I would, kind of lean on our councils. If there's any groups that you all know are knowledgeable of, like I think this is something that you should be a part of. But nonetheless, definitely our boards and commissions, getting to understand those individuals who are volunteering their time to help move the city forward, building those relationships, attending those meetings early on. So that I'm aware of what's going on. And like I mentioned earlier, having that pulse on the city, but also they know how to reach me, and I can lend my kind of expertise as it relates to our resources that we have available to help those boards and commissions have success. But also, I think there are going to be some other groups, that are affinity groups that are within the city that are going to look for opportunities to, how can they contribute and be a part of, what's going on here in Charlotte, and removing or evaluating what ways we can partner, what ways we can collaborate. Driving around here in the city and getting a post where I didn't know you had Michigan in the back here in the backyard. I thought it was pretty much all Michigan State community, but things like places like that. Everyone is going to want to have success and is going to want. They're just looking for opportunities to contribute, and so if I can provide leadership and going out and meeting with those groups, definitely will. That's one of kind of my day one goal is to try to establish communication and connections with those community groups.
Excellent. How do you envision getting engaged within the Charlotte community?
Oh, number one is being visible. Yeah, I don't know if people still hand out cards in this digitized world, but nonetheless, it's a card that you can use on your iPhone. You can connect with people electronically, and going around and getting, day one is trying to be as visible as possible, not getting tied to the email and being in the office. It's important, but you have to etch out the time, on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis to introduce yourself to as many people as possible, know how to get a hold of me, and make those connections early on. As we all know, it's very important to have good relationships, and within the community, but also being accessible, knowing how to get a hold of you. So that's been my go-to is, does everyone know I have an unforgettable name, if you will, James. So if you haven't heard of Vester in the city, then please let me know, and I'll definitely make those connections with those individuals. If they have not gotten a hold of me. I've even done the route of going door to door. I've had some seniors who were unable to make it out to council meetings. They call me and say, "Hey, can you come over?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, let me make it." To my couple of times, it's going 2 hours sitting on someone's couch and talking to them, and it's like, "Hey, I got to get out of here." Thank you for I give you all the information, all the updates, but start looking at the time, like, man, it's getting to 6, 7 o'clock. I got to go get something to eat. So, going to the furthest extent possible, I think has been key for me. Is making myself available, being accessible. I've had seniors give me a call and say, "Hey, I wish I could say this at the council meeting." And I was like, "Well, you can." As people bend your ear and you give them the information back. So not forgetting that it's not going away from the electronic or the digital connection. Some people are just not able to make it out. So finding whatever avenue works for them, and making it happen. So making that connection.
Provide an overview and an assessment of your biggest professional failure.
Oh, wow. That's deep, man. It's therapy. My biggest professional failure. I think we kind of talked about it, Vince and I were just before now. It was thinking that you've done enough with the communication with the council members and everyone is on the same page. And then you find out later on, like, oh man, someone just hasn't let you know that maybe you need to slow it down a little bit and take the time and, walk through the process as how you arrived at a decision or why you're pushing a certain proposal from a department head and wanting to get it done. And you think it's, you've done and checked all the boxes and you've done all the engagement that you need to, but there's sometimes that outlier that, has not, you really haven't hit it home for them and you're wondering why, you're pushing up against getting a no answer. And I've had this happen where, thought I made the best proposal possible as the city manager, and I had a couple of council members who voted no. And you always want to know, well, why did you vote no? I thought it was pretty straightforward, and it was come to find out after having some Q&A behind the scenes is that hey, I just got confused. I don't understand what why are we why are you bringing this proposal forward? And so after just having that conversation, I was like, well, you get a hold of me before, the meeting, let me know what you kind of fuzzy details you're fuzzy on, or, you need some little clarification. But I don't want, so I want to just give them reassurance that let me know if you're unclear on something beforehand, and so that was a lesson learned. I think that was the biggest, one of my failures is in the past was, just slowing things down a little bit and making sure everyone was understanding of a proposal that I brought forward.
Give an example of how you have handled the rejection or dismissal of your ideas or policies in a professional context.
I think kind of leaned on that just in my previous response was doing the homework, just asking the question professionally. Understand that some things may not go your way, but if I can just get a little bit of a glimpse of what happened or what did I miss the ball on something or was something not clear, I think that helps me going forward on either providing a certain detail that the council member or a council would like to hear, or there's been past experiences of something similar, of a policy that was shot down, and it's like, well, okay, I understand. Give me the context, a little bit of the history as to relates. I only know what I know, and then to ask, what I don't know, I want to get the information, from the council, so or the council member or the group or whomever. But you think you do your due diligence beforehand, and that's probably one of those aspects or skill sets that I bring is just asking to the question, just where I'm under clear in my head as to the next time you go to bat at this or if something I need to address, then I can do that, and it helps me professionally going forward.
Describe a situation that exemplifies your philosophy of leadership.
Should describe a situation or just my leadership style?
However you want to take it.
All right. I think my leadership style is very democratic. I'm very much so going to include getting the right people in the room, given whatever situation comes about. I do value the opinions of, my staff and, their expertise in their field. And then we can have a robust conversation on what I, kind of know about the subject matter as well, and just lessons learned over the years that I've been in local government. But nonetheless, it's getting the right people in the room, asking the right questions, having their value in their feedback, and then ultimately making a decision. Once a decision is being made, I understand that you have to close the loop and make sure that everyone is understanding of what that decision is. But nonetheless, being very open to different ideas, bringing in cross conversations from different departments, department heads. Sometimes there's some information there that could be beneficial, you know, from an outside, so there's an outsider's opinion, whether it be, you know, building versus zoning or, you know, what have you. So very inclusive in that regard. Um, uh, Allow for, you know, ideas to be challenged. You know, it helped me think things through, do some critical thinking, and nonetheless, like I said, the leadership style is being very, you know, open and having a fun, you know, while we're doing serious business, but understanding that we want people to enjoy, you know, I value employees and make sure they're having a good time doing their job and doing their work and what they bring to the table and not being uptight. So keeping things loose, you know, but we're going to make some progress and we're going to do phenomenal things under my leadership, and we're going to have a good time doing it.
Excellent. Tonight you have the mayor and council here, but you also have key leadership, senior staff here as well. So this question will probably intrigue them. Give examples of how you have worked to shape the culture of previous organizations that you have worked for. What type of culture did you attempt to cultivate and why?
Just that, you know, understanding, take care of the people that are taking care of you, you know, trusting that they all know to do their jobs. And, you know, if it needs to be coaching, you know, coaching people up, you know, but I've always looked at valued employee surveys, doing surveys and finding out what's going on, what's the temperature of the room, what are some of the issues that need to be worked on. Just recently, you know, I've had issues, you know, with, you know, I was like, man, what's going on? You know, I had an employee who was underpaid, you know, and none to not sugarcoat it, but it was an equity issue, pay equity issue. And so, you know, we did the homework, did the investigation, and you know, made the decision. We're going to up the pay, and she was very much supported. I think the previous administration just had got it wrong with, you know, assigning pay, but taking care of your staff, just always doing those checks of, you know, is everyone getting properly paid? What are the benefits that we're offering? You know, how are things working? Where do you see yourself, you know, having one-on-ones with staff members, you know, on where do you see yourself in your current role? What are some things, professional development aspect, been a very big proponent for professional development. Actually served on the professional development committee with our management group here in the state of Michigan for some time. So I see that being a very big benefit for staff members. Also done job classification studies and pay studies, and to make sure that we're keeping pace with the current state where we're paying market rate for, you know, staff members. So all of this, I think, is very important to me to make sure I take good care of, you know, the people that are doing the work, you know, and showing value as best as possible. So I've always had an open door, you know, come in, talk to me, let me know what's going on, having one-on-ones, and then, you know, going out and seeing, you know, this is as far as I can get, you know. It's not like open, you know, you can't pay you everything, but I can show you as much value as possible that, you know, I value who you are and what you bring to the table. So there's more and more I can share about that, but we can, you know, to keep this going, I do value, you know, the staff and what you bring to the table.
What is the most difficult professional relationship you have had, and how have you managed ongoing interaction with that person?
Oh, Clerk Smith. No. No, I won't go into detail. But, you know, I think the clerk and the manager have to work in sync. You know, there's a lot of things statutorily that the clerk has to get done. And so I've always just tried to massage that relationship as it relates to the clerk. But also, you know, working with the mayor, I think is very important. All of the council members knowing how to get a hold of me, having those one-on-ones, you know, making myself, hey, you know, what days works for you if you want to come in and have a cup of coffee, whatever you know it takes to try to build those strong relationships, so that we can have that robust conversation. And you can inform me of what's going on, what you're hearing in your neighborhoods, or what's bothering you, what's keeping you up at night. and then just kind of be solution-based. I think looking at what are some alternatives, what are some approaches to address those issues. And so, I think all relationships matter. They're all important. But I think, professionally, I've always had to cultivate a really strong relationship with the city clerk, because they have a lot that they're asked to do. And so administratively, try to work towards having a good, positive working relationship.
If a department has more work than can be accomplished with the current resources, how would you approach problem solving in that situation and why?
Going back to being strategic, looking at it from a strategic planning standpoint, what's most critical? What are our mission critical projects that need to get done, and let's focus on those. So going through a list of prioritization, what are some things we can come back to? And then just like I mentioned, broadcasting that a little bit broader and whether it's coming from the council, elected officials, and letting them know and keeping them informed as to the workload that's on a particular department, and then give reassurance to the department head of let's shorten this list up and let's focus on what needs the most impactful projects that need to be taken care of, and then we'll just work it from there. We'll kind of chunk it into smaller pieces. It's like taking bites out of an elephant, one piece at a time. And like I said, giving that reassurance that it'll be fine. We'll work through it. But let's, I don't want to overwork staff, so keeping that pulse on what's happening at the department level.
As we move toward concluding our time together today, what attributes or characteristics of note do you bring that may distinguish you from the other high-quality candidates that have applied for the position of city manager in Charlotte today?
That's a great question. I think being, as I've been able to do an assessment on myself, I think being steady, the steady worker, steady and calm. I know that there's issues or concerns and projects and things that come up that are high level. It's like you got to stay calm in the face of that adversity, or and showing good leadership. Is that we're going to work through it, giving that reassurance, and hoping that you can have that autonomy to make sure they get things done, but also making sure you're being communicative about what's going on throughout the organization. So being a steady hand, being a calm hand leader, and one that's going to, hey, we're going to have a great time, and work is work. But, you understand we do a lot of serious things here at the local government level. And I think just over time, you get used to that, as you stay in it a little bit longer, as you can look at James, you're very calm, collected person. So I think those are my attributes, is that, don't get too riled up, don't get too high, don't get too low. Just stay steady and get your stuff done.
Before I get to the next question, is there anyone on the council who would like to ask a question?
Yeah, I would like you to, well, first, thank you for your answers. That was great. I would like you to describe what you consider the ideal city park and what makes it so.
Oh, man. That was a good one. First of all, I would say I am a big proponent of city parks. Like I mentioned earlier, I have 3 boys, and so we do our evaluations on city parks quite a bit. I think it's going to, number one, it has to be clean. It has to be walkable. It has to have the facilities that are necessary in terms of, play structures or the ball fields, well taken care of. Also, if there's high usage, maybe you look at restrooms. Is there an opportunity to do that? So, but nonetheless, they have to be accessible, and like I said, well taken care of. I think those are the highlights. I think they make the neighborhood. I think they also make the community, is constant looking at, in what ways can we make this better. So I've applied for a number of park and rec grants. in every community that I've been in. Been awarded several of those, as I highlighted in my cover letter, to a tune of over $1 million, working through with Michigan Department of Natural Resources, and then just doing the research, on what are some of our low-hanging fruit opportunities to make it even better, whether it's having walking paths that are wide enough for people to, two people to go through, or, what are some toys that need to be replaced, the surfaces that we're applying, so all around, I think it's doing an evaluation, a constant evaluation as to it relates to parks.
Thank you for being here today. I just wanted to ask a question about the budget. Could you briefly explain to me what your budget process looks like and how you intend to get everyone involved in making sure we're all united around the plan?
I think early on, when we have that strategic planning session, before we even start talking about the budget, is what are those priorities that you would like to see? And putting together a plan for each department on how does the budget relate to the department, or does the department budget reflect those priorities that you all would like to see? So having that dialogue early on, it gets earlier and earlier, in the fiscal year when you are talking about you adopt a budget, and then almost a month later you're talking about the next budget. So I think just having that time where we have a workshop, facilitating a workshop to talk about the priorities from year to year. And like I mentioned, having that short list of, 5 or 6 goals, 5 or 7 goals that you all like to see. And then involving department heads as well. I think they play a key part in having that dialogue between the department heads and the council, as to what's attainable, what their needs are to attain those goals that they're setting. And, as it goes on the fiscal year, you all are getting the information as month to month, as to where we're at, where we stand budgetarily. I've had a great opportunity, where I was at previously with the city of Springfield of, being a small town, we accomplished a lot just having great budgeting and internal controls as it relates to, how do we get all this stuff done and with low debt, at the end of the day. But I think it's a good practice is that we, look at how are we spending money and what we're spending money on, and stretching those dollars, leveraging our budget against grant opportunities. But that strategic planning, process is, I think, step one is you make those connections as to this project goes with this project, and this is going to stretch our dollars a little bit further because we have a good plan in place. So I think it's just having that dialogue early on and getting on the same page and making the budget reflect what you all would like to see, and understanding that it's a long range. Every year there's a connection to it. And if you want to see the final outcome of it, it'll take a little bit of time, but if you take the proper steps to budget properly, I've seen it work time and time again that, you end up in a good place of everyone being on the same page, budget, understanding the numbers, where the money is at, where money goes, and then just being creative, how you can borrow money, financial. I don't want to get into depth about the financial aspect of what a finance director does, but it's a lot of bit of communication in that regard.
Yes, very short. In your time in your manager positions, have you had any direct dealings with the MERS situation, good, bad, or otherwise? I'd like to hear how you've dealt with some of them to get people where they need to be, or ideas to help them get further ahead faster.
Did James ask you to ask this question? No, no, I won't mess with James right now about that. But no, I have used, early on in my career, when I started out in Granite Haven, It was called the Silver Tsunami, and we had a lot of retirees at that point in time. So I got exposed to that early on, the importance of, the retirement and how you work with your staff and education. And so I've always carried that with in my career. Time flies, and I'm looking like, man, I'm in my, later years now. But I've always wanted to do. When I worked with the city of Springfield and the finance director there, I preached education, and so we worked closely with MERS with getting them into our doors, and educating and putting together a compensation report to each staff member to know where they're at, and making sure that we were bringing in MERS to have more and more conversation as it relates to, how taking care of each employee. So as it relates to that individuals, yes, we were actually awarded an impact award for our education program that we instituted of the city of Springfield. As far as MERS and where they're at now, as an organization, I can't really speak to it, but I know it's a lot going on there that has to be kind of taking a deeper dive into as it relates to how they're operating and what they have going on. Did I answer your question? Because I kind of went between the.
There's been so many cities that have had issues with it, and they find themselves so far behind, and they're trying to get caught up with the 8 ball, rather than
Yes.
having to be taken over by an emergency manager or something. Those ideas, I
I,
dealt with any of them.
y- with our finance director, yes, I would say being in the manager seat, we would contribute a lot of money, and it went nowhere. And our percentage as to funding percentage, it didn't really move the needle a whole lot. And so, but we were diligent in our approach to trying to get up to 100% funded, if not more. It's just a slow process, as you don't really see a whole lot of progress as it relates to the dollars in and the dollars out coming on the other end of the equation, if that makes sense.
Esther, finally, is there anything else you would like the mayor and council to know before we end our discussion today? Or do you have any key questions before we leave?
It was talked about a little bit briefly, but I just would like to say again, thank you. But I had a couple of questions, as it relates to how you all are working together, with the past being what it was, as it relates to, the turmoil and the turnover of managers. How do you all view yourselves now as it relates to the city manager role and or a council manager form of government? Do you feel like things are settled down and we are moving in the right direction, or there's some other issues that maybe I should, we could talk about? If you have one, or if it's like, hey,
Everybody's been learning. I think it got out of control, to be honest with you, and I think it is we've heard that comment from Mr. Freed, actually, that things are more under control and people respect the city more than what they used to. And it's hard to keep everybody in line that the manager's still the boss of all the employees. They work for him, they don't work for the council, and the manager works for us. I keep looking over there, but I should be looking over there. Did you want to add something real quick? Because we are over time.
I just want to say that this group particularly, we're passionate about things, but at the end of the day, you vote, and then you move on from there. We don't let things linger, which I think is a great improvement. And I think the other thing that's good about this council is if you say to one of us, you're kind of getting out of your lane, well, you're right back into our lane. Sometimes you're just a little overzealous. You want to know information about something. But, I think that's something that I notice in the council that the council does really well.
Mayor? Yes. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we don't scare away candidates by our past actions. In reality, and I think Councilman Rodriguez and I are the longest serving council people here, we've only gone through really 2 full-time managers. We've gone through a number of managers, but they were interim, and they were hired as interim. So there's a sense that, things were unstable, and that's why the door kept going out with a new manager, et cetera, from that standpoint. And then we had a situation where a interim also applied for a full-time position from that standpoint. So I joined council in '22. We had a city manager at that time, and she resigned to take a better paying job and less stressful job from that standpoint. And then we had a series of interims, and we hired this last one, and he decided to retire quicker than what we had hoped for. But he was a great manager, and I think we all got along with him very much. So the impression that it was a revolving door, I just want to make sure that you're clear of that. It was fundamentally the process that we were going through at that time. And of course, in between there, we had an election and had some new council people join us. And then again, we're going to see that same thing in November. And if you have any experience with cities, you know that as council change, things may change the direction of where we're going and how we're trying to get there.
Well, I know fully about that. I've had council changes every year in one in one city I worked for, so I understand that. Thank you for the time. I know you all had to move on. I appreciate it. And if there's anything that, oh, all right, someone got to run out. Okay, but no, thank you again, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you, James. I appreciate it, and look forward to the next steps.
Mr. Mayor, can we adjourn for a 5-minute recess?
Yes, we can. We'll adjourn 5-minute recess. Mr. Freed.
Mr. Mayor and Council, we have Howard Fink here this evening. Good evening.
Thank you for having me.
So the mayor and council have asked me to ask the first rounds of questions. They may interrupt with some follow-up questions or some follow-ups towards the end. I expect the mayor and council to chime in. So we'll just try to move this as quickly as possible. This is not a congressional oversight hearing, so have fun with the process. We hope you get to know a little bit about you, okay?
You ever been to one of those?
Yeah. The mayor and council have had the opportunity to do an initial review and assessment of you based upon your resume and your responses to the candidate questionnaire, and thank you for filling those out for us. We would like to learn more about you as an individual. Give us a sense of who you are from a personal perspective.
First and foremost, family man, wife and 2 children, ages 11 and 9. Son is in Little League, daughter is in running club. That is a huge part of my life. We live in West Michigan, and I would say personally, some of the things that interest me, I love boating. We have a small boat that we keep on Lake Macatawa in an in-and-out facility. Used to play a lot of golf before I had kids. It doesn't happen very much anymore. In terms of hobbies, I'm a big sports fan. I love the Steelers, ironically. Yeah, that's a little bit about me. I've been in local government management for the last 20 years. Have a master's in urban planning. Absolutely love my profession. Can be challenging at times, quite stressful, but it's quite, there's a lot of good that comes out of it. It's incredibly rewarding.
Excellent. What prompted your decision to leave your current place of employment or look for an alternative position and apply to be Charlotte's next city manager?
Yeah. So I had an interim position for a few months running a water and sewer treatment plant. I'm not qualified to have that position on a long-term basis because I don't have the credentials that you really need in order to effectuate that kind of leadership and management. Previous to that, I was in Park Township. Had a great 8.5 year run. There was a new supervisor, new council that came on board, and the supervisor and I, we just weren't the right match for each other. Actually, the supervisor was on the board previously, and we got along great, and we worked really well together. But when that leadership change occurred, it just wasn't the right match. And so there was a mutual separation that was created, and we parted ways. Very proud of the time that I had in Park Township. Had very positive reviews every single year, raises every single year. So very, very proud of the accomplishments in that community and the work that we did. But again, a little bit of a leadership change, and sometimes that happens where it's just not the right fit. Charlotte interested me. I was here 3-4 months ago. I think there's a lot of opportunity. A great little downtown that I know that you guys are working on. And so I saw the opening and thought I would give it a try.
Excellent. You hit on this just a little bit. Well, what are your impressions about the challenges and the possibilities in the city of Charlotte?
Well, I think some of the biggest challenges is, and this is true in a lot of communities, and I mean this in no disrespect. I think that, you know, Charlotte is like a lot of Midwestern towns and battling the issues that kind of sometimes come with that, small Midwestern towns, investment, sometimes lack thereof, trying to identify new housing starts. And those are challenging issues, particularly when you're not a community with really high-end demographics. And that can be quite challenging, doing local economic development, attracting, you know, new growth and new opportunities. Those things can be challenging in communities that are not, as I said, high-end demographics. And I think Charlotte is challenged by infrastructure, in infrastructure investment, things as basic as paving the roads, buying new fire trucks, those type of things. So I think those are some key challenges that Charlotte has, but not much different than other communities in Michigan and many communities throughout the Midwest and throughout the United States. Got to put together a capital improvement plan, and identify your resources, and figure out, you know, where those assets need to be improved and how that is going to play out over time. So.
What is the most important task or function of a city manager and why?
That's a great question. You know, I would say the most important task of a city manager is to interface between department heads and the council. That relationship, if you will, that liaison is critical. And sometimes it's in a managerial function. Sometimes it's in a leadership function. Sometimes it's in a liaison type function. I believe that local units of government work best when roles are clearly defined. And that is that, you know, there's a manager and the council appoints that manager. The council has that one position and that one employee, and then things funnel down from that individual. When there is interactions that go beyond those type of roles and responsibilities, that's when things can get a little bit thorny. And so I think one of the most critical elements of a city manager is to be that interface between the council and the department heads and make sure that there's a clear distinction between those roles and responsibilities. So I think that's one massive element. I think the other massive element is that the city manager is in fact the council's project manager. If the council decides that they want to do X, the city manager needs to implement X. And so I would say those are the two most critical elements of a city manager.
Give examples of how you have worked to collaborate with elected municipal leaders in your previous or current role.
Oh, well, I've always felt constant communication with elected officials is critical. There's not a one way to do things. There's not a one size fits all. We should all be communicating regularly. I often will say that I'll set a goal that I would meet with every elected official at least once every quarter. If not, I'm meeting with elected officials every week. And I think that dialogue is critical and important, whether it's a phone call, whether it's emails, whether it's in person. Much prefer in-person relationships in that regard. So I think that those are conversations that need to be happening regularly. And I think from an organizational standpoint, it really actually becomes critical that those conversations occur because you don't want to be in a violation of the Open Meetings Act. And so if you are deliberating amongst yourselves, whether it be on email or whether it be in sort of closed door meetings, and you're not deliberating with the manager and using the manager as that interface, you can really kind of go afoul of the Open Meetings Act. And so one of the things that city managers try to do and also attorneys try to do is protect you all from those violations and make sure that those conversations are happening through the manager because managers are not elected officials, and so therefore we would not run the risk of running afoul of the Open Meetings Act.
As city manager, what groups would you expect to communicate with on a regular basis, and what would you do to establish and keep channels of communication open?
DDA, Board of Appeals, Zoning Board of Appeals, Planning Commission, fire boards, if there's a local fire board that exists. Those are all entities that you really want to engage with on a regular basis. I try to go to those meetings, not all the time, but as much as I can within reason. And I also try and communicate with those chair people on a regular basis. It's important to understand where those folks are coming from because much of the policy initiatives, a lot of the policy initiatives don't actually come from the council, they come from some of those other entities. In particular, the Planning Commission. Planning Commission is a critical element of your community, and you want to be interfacing with the Planning Commission chair and staff that interfaces with the Planning Commission so that those issues are addressed. And also, you want to make sure I would be interfacing with those entities so that you coordinate the efforts of the council with those other entities, because oftentimes the policies that the council wants to interact or council wants to create or move forward, those policies can come with some of those other commissions and boards.
Excellent. How do you envision getting engaged within the Charlotte community?
I think the only way that you can engage or the effective way to engage is to be present. And so, you show up to events and when there are residents that come into the building, you communicate with those residents. You ask those residents questions, right? What are the kind of things that they would like to see? I'm a firm believer, and I think I said this in the questions that were submitted, or I submitted to you all. You really have to listen to the residents, understand what their concerns are. I know it can be challenging sometimes, and generally speaking, people don't come to City Hall to tell you you've done a great job. But the longer I've been doing this, the more patience I develop, and the greater my understanding and recognition of how important it is to just listen and seek to understand. So, one of the things that I say is you should operate under the definition that Brene Brown created of empathy, which is that I think I've said this in the past, that you understand something so deeply that even if you disagree with it, you realize and understand and recognize their point of view. And that's really when you get to kind of empathy. And that's really what you need to do with residents throughout the community.
See if I can't pitch you a softball here. Provide an overview and assessment of your biggest professional failure.
Ooh. Well, I would say that, to date, probably my biggest professional failure is not kind of, the relationship that I had between myself and the supervisor in Park Township just recently is, I look back on that and say, I wish I had done things a little differently. I wish that there were different communication strategies and different conversations that we had, or that I would have had. Again, I don't want to belabor it, and I don't want to beat myself up over it, because I do recognize that as a manager professional, there are just times when you're not going to work well with somebody. But looking back on it, I think that I could have been more measured in my approach. And so, I would say that is probably the biggest failure so far.
Give an example of how you have handled the rejection or dismissal of your ideas or policies in a professional context.
I often say, it's ultimately the council's decision. And so all I can do is provide, feedback, data, information, and opinions. If the council wants to go in a different direction, then that's politics, right? That's local government, and that happens regularly. And so I don't know that I would necessarily have a specific example of how I address that. I just move on. There are times when I think the issue is so significant that you can't move on. And there are just times as a professional you have to say, gentlemen, ladies, I would request a reconsideration. But for the most part, you just move on, and you move on to the next policy issue. That's life. That's life in the role of a city manager.
Describe a situation that exemplifies your philosophy of leadership.
So we had an airport, and this airport is not like the airport that you all have, all right? This airport was completely, it was closing itself. It was, had major infrastructure issues. The runway was in incredibly poor condition. We had almost no more pilots. I think we were down to like 8 pilots. We had no ability to attract pilots because we didn't have the right navigation easements and we had a displaced threshold. We had a lot of issues, and this airport had been around for a long, long time. And for the last 30 years, it had been in major, major decline. And eventually, we ended up closing the airport and turning it into a park. And I'm going to answer this question in two parts. The first part is, in the beginning, many of the elected officials, in particular the supervisor, was absolutely pro-airport. In no uncertain terms could this airport close. And here I am as the manager, and I'm looking at all of the data. I'm looking at the revenue, I'm looking at the expenditures, I'm looking at the safety elements, I'm looking at the future. Could we get the easements that we need? Can we get any grant money? And everything is saying that this airport is unsustainable. And if you go back 10 years, the council or not the council, the board of trustees had created a commission. Commission said this airport's not sustainable, we should close it. 10 years before that, the same thing happened. Every single 10 years, this airport kept coming up, and it just kept becoming a thorn in the side of the community, and it was this conflict that never would end. And even though there was elected officials and they were so pro-airport, I was charged with writing this document in order to save the airport. And I had to ethically put in this document the truth. And, you know, I went to other airports and said, how do we do this? And they said, you can't. It's just not sustainable. And I had to create a document that essentially did everything in our power to advocate for the possibility of a new airport and what that might look like, and at the same time acknowledge the fact that these numbers were not sustainable, that the story was not sustainable. And I had to balance that walk, if you will. And, you know, there were people that when I finally got to the document, they were very upset. But the elected officials read it, and in particular the supervisor, and said, wait a second, Howard is right. This information in here is accurate, and you can't sugarcoat it. If you all, in terms of the airport folks, can go and get donations, great. If we can get millions of dollars in here and you can figure out how to do that, fantastic. But we're not going to put a document out with incorrect information, with incorrect data, with incorrect analysis. And so, you know, that was one of the toughest things that I had to do as a professional, is figure out how to both be true, ethical, but also put together a document that was positive. Ultimately, the airport was closed, and we decided we were going to build a park. The council or the board of trustees wanted a pickleball facility. I decided that we were going to build the pickleball facility on our own instead of contracting it to a general contractor. We did it ourselves. We did all the trails ourselves. We essentially built the entire park ourselves. Obviously through subcontractors, right? But we didn't have a general. And I would say that that exemplifies my philosophy, or my kind of who I am, is somebody who says, wait a second, I don't necessarily want to spend the level of dollars to have it, you know, managed by a professional contractor. We're gonna do it on our own, and we figured it out, right? We figured out how we were gonna do the trails, how we were gonna do the pickleball courts. We did all of the work in-house. And in the end, we ended up having a great community park. Another example of that on that same footprint is the Veterans Memorial wanted to have a Veterans Memorial. Their first design was $4 million. I went to the Veterans Council and said, guys, with all due respect, you will never in your lifetime sell enough bricks for $4 million Veterans Memorial. I redesigned the Veterans Memorial with them. We brought in a landscape kind of contractor. We literally drew it on the board. And to save money, I let the construction occur without, engineered drawings. And so, my sense is that the sidewalk is maybe a few inches off of exactly where it's supposed to be, but we knew enough about how to design and build those type of environments. And instead of, spending $1 million with engineered drawings and all of the fancy type of stuff, we subbed it out ourselves and built it for about 150 grand. That's who I am.
Excellent. So you have the mayor and council here tonight, but behind you have the senior leadership team, department heads. And so this question is probably a little bit geared towards them. Give examples of how you have worked to shape the culture of your previous organization, of the previous organizations that you have worked for. What type of culture did you attempt to cultivate and why?
I mean, culture is everything, right? Culture is the foundation of an organization. You have a poor culture, you don't have great results. I'm a firm believer in creating a culture in which everybody, whether they're at the lowest point of the organization or the highest point of the organization, leads. There's a book about a gentleman who is I believe it was a flight attendant, and how every single person that ever interacted with this individual felt like this guy went above and beyond to provide service to the other people, and that in his presence, those folks felt like they were $1 million. I'm a firm believer in whether or not you're a clerk or whether or not you're a department head, you should be thinking to yourself, how do I best lead? And in a local government context, that is going the extra mile for residents. That's going the extra mile to solve issues, to address complaints. We often can take a complaint and just toss it over to somebody else. So for example, when I would talk with my code enforcement folks, I would say, look, you're not responsible for resolving the conflict between neighbors. But that doesn't mean that you can't try and facilitate a conversation. It doesn't mean that you can't say to the individual, hey, this is something that you need to have a conversation with your neighbor about. You want to go over there? We can knock on the door together. There is an element of not passing the buck that is critical in local government. And that's the kind of culture that I try to impart in a community. Somebody calls up and has a question about their tax bill, right? If let's say the finance director or the clerk isn't available, can you help them? Can you help explain what the situation is as opposed to just transfer the call? That's really the element of sort of leadership that you need to impart at all levels of the organization, right? We all operate in departments, and each of those departments have various processes. I want the staff to be the staff that says, how can I improve what we're doing? And that is something, again, that can happen at all levels of government. And that's the culture that I try to impart in a community. I like to think of myself in a lot of ways as a teacher. And so when somebody comes and asks me a question, I generally have a story to tell them. That's just who I am. I think that I like to try to get all of the staff to have that level of personal interaction.
You hit on this a little bit earlier, but it's one more time. What is the most difficult professional relationship you have had, and how have you managed that ongoing interaction with that person?
Well, I mean, in terms of the council or in terms of the staff?
Just in general.
Well, I'm going to actually share with you a different situation. I shared with you earlier the situation with the supervisor. But I don't know that that's probably the most difficult. I'd say the most difficult relationship I ever had was having to terminate somebody because they were not the right culture fit. I made the decision to terminate a public works director after he had been in the community for 20 years. And it was a really challenging decision. And it was a decision that I agonized over for probably about 6 to 8 months. Ultimately, we had to go in a direction. The individual that was there was it almost as though he had been promoted above his ability, right? So he was more of a supervisor of individuals, but I needed somebody who was going to be managing construction contracts, managing infrastructure, managing, what roads we pave, how we pave them, what's the analysis that you go through. I needed a true public works director. And this individual just wasn't going to be that person. This individual also was not able to kind of say, hey, how can we do this internally, as opposed to pay this person or pay that person, or constant outsourcing. And so there wasn't that cultural fit, and that individual wasn't able to kind of make that leap. And eventually I decided to terminate him, and I didn't terminate him for cause. I gave him a buyout because I thought that was the ethical thing to do. But I would say that that's probably the most difficult relationship I've ever had, is working with that individual, trying to kind of bring him up over the year that I did, that we were trying to kind of improve his skill set, and it just didn't work. And that process was really challenging, as you could all imagine.
If a department has more work than it can be accomplished with the current resources, how would you approach problem solving in that situation, and why?
Well, first and foremost, communicate with the council. So, oftentimes, again, there was that bridge, right? And so the council may be saying, hey, we want this, we want this, we want this, and there's not enough capacity. And so, making sure that the council is aware of the capacity constraints is critical. Because what you don't want is you don't want the council to keep asking for particular projects to happen or wondering why something's not occurring. And in the meantime, staff is just swamped, right? And does not have that capacity. So that's first step. Second step is to, maybe first step would be to sit down with staff, obviously, but to sit down with staff and to go over what that capacity constraint is. Is it something that we could, bring in some outsourcing for, some contracted labor, have some individuals relative to, work, that we can, again, when I say contract or outsource, and we can bring in some capacity? Or is it something that, only is internal, and we need additional staff? And so having that conversation with the department head to sort of evaluate what we're doing and how much staff we have, and how to move forward is critical. I would say then having that conversation with the council to make sure that they're informed, so that those two things are aligned.
Excellent. As we move toward concluding our time together today, what attributes or characteristics of note do you bring that may distinguish you from the other high-quality candidates that have applied for the position of the city manager of Charlotte?
Well, first of all, I will always say that there's some great candidates in terms of city management. So I don't want to say that I'm better than anybody else. I'm just different. I would say the thing that sets me apart is I am a detailed-oriented individual. I like to know the details. And so I have a very broad base of experience in a lot of different areas. One of the things I just explained is who I am is, I'm the person that wants to build the park internally and contract it internally. There's not very many city managers that will take on that kind of situation. I mean, most city managers will say, hey, let's just find a general contractor and bring in quotes and be done with it. Myself, I'm the person who says, how can we save money? I also have a great breadth of knowledge in a number of different department situations. So one of the things that I bring to the table is I have a background in urban planning. I filled in for a zoning administrator and permit person for many communities. I have a very strong background in parks and recreation, infrastructure. I was the person in my communities that was determining how a road would get fixed, not just which road would get fixed, but how it got fixed. Was it just a mill and fill? Were we topping it? Were we doing curb and gutter? Going through whether or not it was an asphalt mill and fill, or are we going to go and do a microsurface? What type of microsurface? So those kind of level of details is something that I pride myself on, and it goes throughout my career. One of the other things that, when the fire department needed to buy or get a new fire truck, I put myself on the truck committee. I wanted to know, what are the details of that truck that we're getting? What are not just the numbers, but why? Why did we buy the truck that we did? And went through the 6 or 8 months being on that truck committee. When we created a new marine safety division, I wanted to be on the boat committee because I want to know, what kind of boat are we buying? Why? What is, and how does that fit with the issue at hand, or the issue that we're trying to solve? So I am very much a detail type of individual when it comes to city management.
Excellent. Councilmember Scott.
I've been waiting to ask this question for a very long time. First, thank you for coming. If we gave you even more money to build the ideal park, can you tell me what that ideal park would look like?
There is no ideal park. It's what the community wants, all right? So I think you have to get community feedback, and then you build the park from there. I mean, I can go deeper if we want, but
I was hoping to talk about playground equipment, but go ahead.
There's a movement going on right now. A lot of playground equipment is going to natural type of environment. There's actually folks that are creating playgrounds that are completely built out of wood and natural environments. I'm a fan of that. I think that is very effective from a psychological and developmental perspective for children. Personally, I am also a fan of integrating sound in parks. There's a whole movement around like musical parks for much younger kids where they come and they bang on a drum or, you know, bang on chimes or things of that nature. Many years ago, early in my career, I worked with some Eagle Scouts, and they built, you know, sound systems, you know, instead of, you know, paying for them, which can be effective. And if actually they're built well enough, they can last quite a long time. I'm a big proponent of trails and open space. I think we often try to program everything, and frankly, what a lot of folks want is just beautiful nature to be in and just beautiful outdoors. And so, you know, oftentimes, you know, you can spend a whole lot of money, or you could get the local contractor to just take a skidster and just do 2 feet of remove 2 feet of soil, put some sand down, you know, put some chips and fine, and you've got a trail system. And it's not that expensive if you know what you're doing. So I'm a big fan of just open environments, beautiful open environments with trees and trails and nature. Um, Everybody loves pickleball these days. I don't know if it's gonna continue or not. You can't build a pickleball court near any houses because you will get calls all night long.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Yes, can you please just tell me about your budget planning process, who you like to get involved, and how you go about getting everybody behind the budget plan?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the budget, you know, city managers are responsible for budgets, but I think a lot of times we overthink budgets, right? I mean, budgets really are foundationally determined by the department heads, right? So the very first thing that you do, in my opinion, in a budgeting process is you meet with your department heads and you get their priorities. You get their understanding of what's going on in that department. You get the council's priorities in terms of projects and in terms of you know, infrastructure improvements that you want to do. And then you back into the numbers, right? And then you determine whether or not it's feasible. And if it's not feasible, then we look at whether or not there are certain projects from the council or, you know, things that the department heads, you know, want. And then some things have to be removed. I don't know that there's any perfect procedure for budgeting. I think it's a collaborative situation. You know, it's mostly generated by the finance director, but it's a collaborative effort amongst managers and department heads. And, you know, generally speaking, the vast majority of your budget is going to be personnel. And so really, that's really one of the things that you identify early on is, do we need more capacity? Do we need more individuals? And if we do, then we need to program for that. In terms of the functional elements of budgeting, you know, I think it's important to, you know, understate your revenue and overstate your expenditures. So at the end of the year, you have $100,000 or whatever it is unspent appropriations. You always want to make sure that you know where you've understated your revenue and overstated your expenditures because, you know, as an administrator, there's always things that come up. The council always wants to pave another road. There's always a park that needs to be redone. And so you want to understand where those numbers are so that you know what your buffer is over time. You don't want to push that envelope too much because we all know that there are situations in 2000, 2008, where, you know, a lot of communities would have had unspent appropriations, and then all of a sudden those unspent appropriations were just not there anymore. And so, you want to be very careful, you want to be very conservative, but in essence, it's got to be a collaborative process.
Have you had any situation in your employment where you've had to deal with MERS? A situation where you were very underfunded, or perhaps a situation where you were very overfunded in good shape?
I'm sorry, I apologize. Is there a situation in my career where I had to deal with what?
MERS.
MERS?
Yes.
I thought you said something else. Um, Yeah, almost every community in Michigan uses MERS. I have, I mean, all of the communities I've had, we've all had MERS, right? And so I'm constantly interacting with them. In Northfield Township, we were in a bit of an underfunded situation. Park Township, we did not have defined benefit. We had defined contribution, and so we had a tiny liability for that defined benefit. In Northfield Township, we had some issues there. One of the things that's important is to know is that when MERS provides you with the unfunded liabilities, they provide you with those unfunded liabilities as of that day when they give it to you. And so, you know, sometimes you can have a number that looks worse than it is. So for example, like in Northfield Township, the number was about 78-ish, 75, 78%. That's actually not that bad. And when you calculate out over time, that gap can be closed rather quickly. So I have been in communities with unfunded situations. Nothing significant, nothing substantial. You know, I think you just have to budget for it. Unfortunately, the law is sunsetted that used to exist where you could bond for unfunded liabilities, but the state legislature has sunsetted that law. I wish that law still was allowed. It can be controversial to do that, but it's something you have to budget for.
Is there anything else you would like the mayor and council to know before we end our discussion this evening? Or do you have any questions?
No, I'm, you know, one of the things that I had indicated in my questions or questionnaire is, you know, it's really important to have strategic planning. And I think it's one of the things that, as a manager, is one of the most important things that you can facilitate. And even if it's bringing in somebody from the outside to do it, if, you know, you guys want somebody other than the manager to facilitate the conversation, but having that strategic planning is important. I guess one of the questions that I would have is, do you have a strategic plan? And if so, what are the elements on that strategic plan that are, you know, top of mind in order to address?
Yes, and housing.
And speaking of housing, how I mean, you know, do you have folks in the community, local developers that are interested in housing development, or are we looking at a subsidy model?
The culture in the city has really turned off developers from even doing business here in Charlotte. I mean, if you go to a half dozen people that are doing housing development, as soon as you say Charlotte, they go, And for reasons not of the city, but of the fact that the city gave building inspection to the county to do, and they're just not cooperative with the developers. So a decision was made, and we started moving forward with a couple key actions to bring that back in-house, which we are doing right now. And as such, we're starting to get a lot of interest back in Charlotte from that standpoint. We created a housing committee in '24, and we are taking steps to catalog all of our available parcels, things like that. We've got code enforcement. We have rental, and these things we didn't have before, rental permit type of situation. So we're looking at, and I just spent the last 2 days at the housing conference down at the Lansing Center, where the word's getting out. A lot of developers that I talked to and said, hey, come see us from that standpoint. And they said, oh yeah, we heard things are improving, and as soon as I'm done here, maybe I'll give you a call and set things up there. So we're moving forward with what we need to do, and I think that it's something that we have to stay on top of and keep moving in the right direction. We're looking at our second and third floor downtown areas, turning them into housing units. We're just completing our master plan. We're just completing our new zoning ordinance, et cetera, from that standpoint. So we have a big focus on housing right now from that standpoint. But that's where we're at, and I think that we are moving in the right direction. We reestablished our brownfield redevelopment committee, which had been stagnant for quite a few years. We have money there, but nobody knew what to do with it. So we've got that going, and the other one is the land bank. Where the county, we're working with the county on the county land bank. We don't have our own from that standpoint. So we've got a lot of steps going on in that direction.
If I may ask, what were the issues that the county was requiring that was a barrier? That, I mean, the building code is the building code, and the rehab code is the rehab code.
Yeah.
Only because I was the building official here for 30 years.
Sure.
They were going way beyond what they should have.
Sure.
And so, Mr. Freed.
Mr. Fink, I want to thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, at this time, do you want to take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for everyone. Appreciate it.
Order. Mr. Freed.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before us, we have Scott Sazak. Did I get it right? All right, I asked him to help. Sazak. Sazak.
Like the game show host, but Zach instead of Jack.
All right, Scott, the mayor and council have asked me to ask the questions tonight, so I'll run through these questions with you.
Okay.
At the end, they may have some follow-up questions. I anticipate 2 or 3.
Okay.
And so we'll get started on this, all right?
Sounds good.
All right. Scott, we've had an opportunity, the mayor and council have, to review, do an initial review and assessment of who you are based on your resume and your responses to the candidate questionnaire. Thank you for filling those out. We would like to learn more about you as an individual. So can you give us a sense of who you are from a personal perspective?
Oh, let's see. From a personal perspective, I'm a person who read about Abraham Lincoln in 2nd grade and wanted to do this ever since. And the fact that I ended up as tall as him is just kind of apropos. I've wanted to be involved in government my entire life, so I, pursued it in college. Was involved in that when I was younger. Was more involved in electoral things and in the legislative bodies for part of my life, and then went through a bit of a, I don't want to say midlife because that makes me sound older than I am, a bit of a reset with certain things in my life, and decided to switch and put my master's degree to good use and got more involved inside in governing. So, decided to leave the nest of Macomb County, ran up north to Escanaba as a DDA director, and then took a path that led me to where I am now. as a city manager and saw this opportunity and decided to pursue it. So, but as a person, I'm someone who my size gives me a big personality, and I'm kind of hard to hide. But I also sometimes when I'm being involved in the public, there are times, like especially when I'm home, where I just want to enjoy the peace. So. But that's who I am. I'm just kind of, person who's always wanted to be involved in this and do it. And in my personal time, when I'm, as I'm a homeowner, that usually takes up most of my time. And when people ask me what are my hobbies, I'm like, that's what I used to have when I didn't have, a job that worked this much, and also I didn't have to do house repairs. So, although I do find great solace in mowing my lawn.
What prompted your decision to leave your current place of employment or to look for an alternative position and apply to be the next city manager of Charlotte?
So, what I've said in my current position is that, I'm not in a mode where I'm like, I'm desperate to leave, and I'm not. But when there's an opportunity that looks attractive and looks like something that I think would be something I would be happy to dive into, I'm always willing to look at that, because one of the things that as a city manager is that you can only do so much before it becomes repetitive, before you get comfortable and things just kind of start to slide. And it's also where, when you see an opportunity, for me, I used to work in the Lansing area, so I know the area, and I enjoyed my time out here. So it's also an opportunity to try, moving to a different part of the state and trying a different challenge. And I'm someone who, I don't like to be stagnant. I don't like to feel too comfortable, because that's when, start to make mistakes, or you start to, not seize opportunities. So again, it's one of those instances where I saw the opportunity and I took a look at the city beforehand. Again, I have a little bit of knowledge of it, not just because of my time in Lansing, but I have a personal relationship in the area, so I've been around once or twice. And I said, you know what, that's an opportunity I'd like to pursue. So I sent James my application and my resume, and here I am before you.
Excellent. What are your impressions about the challenges and the possibilities in the city of Charlotte?
Excuse me. So challenges, from what I've been able to ascertain through, because you can't believe anything you read online, so that's always hard to ascertain when you see things. Sorry, I think that went off. Did mine go off? I thought it did. Sorry, I'll just project. So one of the things that I think that I've seen just from my own, distance, is some of the things that every municipality has the challenges of, which for me, I'm a person who, I call myself, I'm an infrastructure man. So I know there's always a lack of funding for things like water and sewer and roads. And so I know finding those opportunities and how to best manage them. Like for instance, I know the state just through their recently reconfigured how road funding is done. So they dedicated more to local roads, which have always been historically kind of underfunded because of how Act 51 works. So to Charlotte specifically, also I know that you've had, I remember seeing this job posted a few years ago, and I know that there has been once or twice of turnover. So I don't know, is it? No, I don't think it is either. But like I said, I'll project as best I can. So to provide stability, that's something else that I pride myself in, is that in my current position, when I got there, I was the sixth manager in 6 years, and now I'm one of the longest serving since we became a city, because I have the patience and the temperament to work through problems. I don't run from them. So I'm someone who also, what I think is an opportunity here, is to build on that stability for the residents of the city, and to build this city into, I think, to exploit every possible opportunity it has.
Excellent. What is the most important task or function of a city manager, and why?
The most important function is to provide leadership to the staff, and then, in at least my view, to let them do their jobs. I'm not a micromanager. I don't believe in it. I've been it before, so I know I don't personally enjoy it, but I want to know what's going on at a level where I'm informed and I can make informed decisions and informed recommendations to council. But I don't need to know the exact type of bolt that's going into the fire hydrant, or the exact type of bolt that's going in here. I don't need to micromanage and that kind of thing. So the most important thing is that, and it also is to be in the inevitable task of being that person who, as the person who is liaison between staff and council, you're hearing from both sides, and to manage that effectively, to make sure that those relations are properly done. So to provide leadership, to be an example, one of the things I say about myself, I'm not a manager who hides in his office. I like to go out and talk to the staff at least once a day, to know that I'm there, to ask them directly if there's an issue, if there's a problem, because I don't like letting things fester. I believe I could say, hey, there's an issue now, let's try and work through it. Or also making sure that the members of the staff, even, below the department head level, know that, you follow the chain of command, obviously, but if you think that your department head is not addressing you and you need to come to me, that I'm available, that I'm not someone who just hides in the office. And as I said, it's kind of hard to hide me anyways. So I like being a visible presence, not just in where I'm working, but in the city I'm working. I've been interrupted in the grocery store more than once asking a question about my job, and I put a smile on my face, and I take care of it, and then I go about my day finding my next fun recipe to put my smoker.
Give examples of how you have worked to collaborate with elected municipal leaders in your previous or current role.
So in my current role, I have meetings with my mayor multiple times a week, whether they be scheduled or impromptu based on need. The other council members know that I can call or talk to me whenever they can. Oh, that works now. Wonderful. Battery change, right? So collaboration with elected officials is, one of the other main parts of my job, because my job is to implement the vision that you all set out. And so it's easier for me to implement if I understand it. And also recognizing that as a person who, oh God, I'm blanking on the character's name in Office Space, has 7 bosses, you have to manage that, because, if you screw up, you're gonna have 7 people having 7 different reasons why, something is wrong. So working with you guys to understand your vision and how you want it implemented, while also balancing that there are 7 people who are 7 elected officials who each probably have a little bit different of how that vision looks, and making sure that my job is to balance that based on what's been given to me. So I believe in constant communication. I believe in open communication. I believe in honest communication. I mean, within reason. I mean, there's sometimes the venue isn't proper. Having a frank conversation like in this setting may not be proper, where it may be, in the office or something. But that's how I believe that, you should be. I am there to, I'm your city manager. I'm there for you guys. And I'm always have an ear open, unless it's 3 in the morning and I'm asleep. But even then, I'll probably take the call.
As city manager, what groups would you expect to communicate with on a regular basis, and what would you do to establish and keep channels of communication open?
So that would be as many of the civically involved organizations in the city as possible. For example, in my current role, the city manager is a automatic member of the board of our Chamber of Commerce. And so I attend their monthly meetings, I go to all the events, I'm an active participant. I've also been a member of the Rotary Club, in our community for that same reason. I can't be involved in all of them because I do need at least some time to not have to go to a meeting every night, but I do try and stay in communication. Like our Lions Club president and I have regular communication. In fact, he's right now probably installing the cement, because we refurbished our Lions Head drinking fountain that's going in near our splash pad. So there's been a lot of constant communication with them. So civic organizations, the townships we deal with, because I know you guys, your fire department operates with the townships, so good relationships with them to maintain that. So anything that could be a benefit to the city, I feel is my responsibility to, if not be an active involved person, to at least have a good open line of communication with.
Excellent. You kind of touched on this, but how do you envision getting engaged within the Charlotte community?
Well, the first thing I do is, if I am so fortunate to be hired, I'd have to ask someone to get me a good realtor so I could find a place to live, close by, so that I can, be more involved that way. So, being part of the community by actually being a part of the community. And then again, it's a matter of, being involved where I can, but not overwhelming, because again, there's always more people who have need than any one person has the ability to give. But to be involved where I can, be someone who's, seen, for lack of a better phrase, get my hands dirty. So, get in there and actually do things and become a member of the community and work with those different organizations, whether I'm an active member or just in communication, and be visible. I think that's the most important thing that a city manager can be, especially when he's not of the community, is to be visible so people know he's approachable, he's someone you can bring a concern to, and I would engage with them in a respectful manner. I mean, even I've been yelled at, cursed at, and said all kinds of things, and I've still had to maintain the professionalism and to say, to walk that back. In fact, there was one gentleman who came to our front office, had his camera out, yelling and screaming at the front desk, and they summoned me through our emergency button and I can out. And I think by the end of it, I think he wanted to take me out for a drink. I still don't know how I did it, but it was just maintaining that professionalism and communication and working through his problem, because I think he wanted to make sure he was heard, and I demonstrated that he was heard, and that although I couldn't give him that yes that moment, I was able to say, this is the process by which I can get you an answer. And at the end of the day, he actually got what he needed, and all was well.
Excellent. Provide an overview and assessment of your biggest professional failure.
Of course, you had to ask me the tough one. So, biggest professional failure. I think it really wasn't my failure, but it happened on my watch, so I am ultimately responsible for it. Was about a year ago, we had about a third of our fire department resign because of various issues, which again, I'm not going to get into specifics because that's not fair to anybody, but part of the reason why it took us by surprise was because apparently there was a notion that no one was going to address their concerns. And that's a failure of me, that they thought I couldn't come to me with those concerns. And I've had conversations with some of them why they thought that way, and it was based on a misunderstanding. So again, that's just human nature. But, you know, you do that through, you improve your communication, you demonstrate that, you know, you're always willing to listen, even if it's something that, even if there's someone you don't personally get along with. Because again, in every group, there's going to be someone who disagrees. I'm sure if I were to ask this, you know, all the people at the table, we have a 3-item pizza, I'm sure I'd have to have a 10-minute conversation to decide what those 3 ingredients are, 3 toppings are. So there's always going to be discussion and conflict no matter what we do. So, but to say that even if you think, you know, personality may conflict, that I'm still there to be a professional, that's something that I've strived to improve because of that. And again, it was a misunderstanding, I think, in poor communication through various channels, but at the end of the day, it's still my responsibility that they didn't in that moment think that they could come to me with their issue, and it got to that level.
Give an example how you have handled the rejection or dismissal of your ideas or policies in a professional context.
There's a phrase from The West Wing that I use in that. I think it was Amy Gardner who said, "If I did the thing, I tried, I failed, I went home, I had a drink. If I win, I have 2 drinks." Not literally, but that's the phrase. That's part of the game. That's part of life in this business. Not everything I say is going to be accepted. Not everything I recommend is going to be taken up. And I understand that. Especially, I'm sure it's going to be a part of a learning curve if I am so fortunate to be chosen. You know, I bring my experience, but no city is the same as the other. What I've experienced in my previous jobs, you know, informs me, but there's a Charlotte answer for Charlotte. It's not me bringing a Caro answer or an Escanaba answer to Charlotte. So that's going to be the other thing, is that part of that learning curve, I'm going to have people say, no, we've tried that, or we didn't work it this way, or this is how we've done. I will admit my least favorite phrase is, this is how we've always done it, because I think there's always room to improve. But that's kind of the thing that I know. Again, it's you take it in stride. It's part of the job. You know, I've had way bigger rejections than this council, 7-0, telling me I'm wrong. You know, I've had much bigger rejections. I'm a big boy. I understand that that's, you know, not everything I suggest is going to be taken. And as long as it's professional and handled professionally and not personally, I take it in stride.
Describe a situation that exemplifies your philosophy of leadership.
I think I kind of spoke on it earlier when I said that my philosophy of leadership is to be an active and seen leader. You know, I think, you know, for as much as we see in television, the movies that people they say that you should lead from the front, I think the best leaders lead from behind. You don't go out there and direct if you don't know what you're directing. You know, I'm not a DPW worker. I have no idea. I've literally, a few weeks ago, we're doing a water project. I stood and watched them connect a new water main and a new hookup to a house. I watched it, stared at it, and I still have no clue how it's done. So for me to say, oh, you need to do it this way, that's me not speaking with my brain, that's speaking with my ego. So I believe in giving the people who know what they need as best I can. Again, we never have enough resources. Any city, the biggest one, the smallest one, there's never enough resources. So you always have to prioritize, and that buck stops with, you know, the city manager. But I believe in trusting the people in the position until they give me reason not to trust them, and then I deal with that. Because, you know, hiring is easy, firing is hard, because no one wants to admit they may have gotten it wrong. But again, that's part of life. You have to admit sometimes you're wrong. So if there's someone in a position that, we've tried and it's just not working, well, unfortunately, that's just unfortunately how it has to be sometime. But I believe in giving people the opportunity to be their own leader, because again, I want to grow people in their positions. I want to grow leaders in the city or wherever I end up working, or here where I am now, anywhere in the future. One of the things I pushed for in my last union contract was incentives for our workers to go out and acquire professional licenses, because I believe in their growth, because that way when it comes time for someone to retire, I have a pool of people who not only have the credentials, but also have the active knowledge of what our city has done. Because I can put a diagram from a professional book in front of everyone on what a water system is, but the guy who's been working there for 30 years, who knows every single improvisation they've done, that's the person who says, oh no, I know the book says we did this, but because we didn't have money or we had to do this, we had to, do it this way, and it works, but that's how we have to, so you go in there with that knowledge. So I believe in, like I said, I believe in leading from behind, because you can still see me back there.
So you have the mayor and council here, but also behind you have senior leadership staff and department heads. So this question is kind of interest of them. Give examples of how you have worked to shape the culture of previous organizations that you've worked for. What type of culture did you attempt to cultivate, and why?
Again, I'll go back to what I've been saying, I think, ad nauseum.
We're okay.
Okay. You never know. I've had worse things happen during interviews. So one of the things that, that my staff has told me, which I find just utterly ridiculous because I don't think it's anything special, is they say, you're the managers who's talked most to us. That there were managers who said they would never come out of their office, and it's like, why would I do that? Not only do I need the socialization just to talk to people, but also that's how you can work through those things. I mean, the random conversations is sometimes how I get the best ideas. Because, you're talking about something and you think about it, and, then you come up, like, for instance, my treasurer and I, when we're talking about the budget, that's how we've solved number of 2 issues, but it's because we've had those conversations. We don't just email the budget back to each other and say, fill in the blank. We sat down and we talked about it. I talked to my front office staff, the utility billing clerk and the office assistant, and they've been there longer than almost all the department heads. So if you want institutional knowledge, that's who has it. So it's a benefit for me to talk to them to get that institutional knowledge. So, and again, having those relationships, again, the amount of people who've told me that I'm the first manager, like for the fire department, you're the first manager who come back here and talk to us. I'm like, why? You guys have all the cool toys. I mean, I got to take my nephew on a fire truck. My nephew's on a fire truck, and my sister-in-law says, I'm old as you, and I've never been on a fire truck, and you did this for my nephews, because, I had that relationship, and I was able to ask that. So, it's building relationships with your staff. I mean, I don't want to be someone who's, heard but not seen. I want to be among them. I want to walk around. Again, I need to stretch my legs. I want to talk to them. I want to go see them. It's getting my steps in. That's good for me, too.
What is the most difficult professional relationship you have had, and how have you managed ongoing interaction with that person?
So my difficult relationships are par for the course, and I'm not going to single anybody out just because I don't think that's fair. But I will say that for my professional relationships where I do have difficulties, my philosophy is, as I stated earlier, if we have a personality clash, that's just life, but I still have to work with you as a professional. I'm going to treat you as a professional as long as you treat me as a professional. Now, if you're someone, like, say if it's one of you who doesn't treat me professionally, I'm not going to respond in kind. But I will go home and complain to either a friend or my mother about it. But you need some sort of outlet. But same thing, like, with department heads. I'm sure there's some, there's some that are, I have a better relationship with than others because of, just personalities and differences in philosophy and experience and just, who you are. But again, I treat them all professionally. I let them know that, if you need something, you come to me. And, I'm not expecting, with this council or any of the staff, I don't think we're going to be, buddies and go hang out and, whatever. That's not my role. That's why, I go home and enjoy the quiet. But my job is to be professional, and my job is to treat someone professionally, even if they may not be treating me that way, especially if it's someone I have to work with, because getting into toxic environments where there's, commentary and gossip and yelling and screaming, that doesn't benefit anyone. Even it may feel good for the moment, and as someone who has occasionally needed to just vent, it feels good in the moment. But if you do it to the person and you do it in a bad way, there's no potential to change that or to grow that moving forward. So yes, will I occasionally vent to a neutral party, most likely my mother? Yes, but I would try never to do that to anybody in person. She is the keeper of my secrets, so.
If it,
Yeah, I popped a few people.
if a department has more work than can be accomplished with current resources, how would you approach problem solving in that situation and why?
Isn't that literally the definition of being a city manager? That is literally the definition. That is what I do every day because, again, there is never enough resources. Never. I work in a city right now that we have 117% fund balance. I have the opposite problem that a lot of cities have is I sometimes have too much money because my city has saved a lot over the time. And I still don't have enough. Like I'll use, for example, our water system. We're putting in 2 new wells, and we need to take one off because we have arsenic, and the arsenic level's going up, and it's still within safe limits, but it's going the wrong direction. So we have to either take it to our plant and clean it, or do something else with it. And I have enough money to do some of the work, including some of the water main work under the roads, but I don't have enough to do everything. So we have to prioritize. This is what is a have to. This is a would like to. And then that's when you start looking at outside sources of revenue. Like we're doing a $13 million wastewater plant improvement project because we got Clean Water State Revolving Fund money. I'm about 2 weeks away from hopefully getting approved for $1.5 million of CDBG money. So when you don't have the resources, sometimes you prioritize, but also you got to go look for them. And I'll say, like for the water, the way they've reconfigured the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund benefits those who have lead. I don't have that problem. So unfortunately, that's not going to be an avenue for me. But every time I see someone from I want to say MEDC, but that's the wrong acronym. Oh my God, what's it?
Eagle?
Eagle, thank you. I was gonna say, they keep changing the name of it. Every time I see someone from Eagle, I'll say, you guys, because also they give points for people who have, deficiencies or have had judgments against them. Like, you're encouraging bad behavior with this. So will I advocate for something that would benefit the community that I'm in because I think that the way things are set up isn't? Absolutely. That's one of the reasons I love going to some of these things where I meet these people and interact with them, where I can say, guys, you're giving people who are bad actors the benefit over those of us who are just trying to get by. So, and then it's looking for alternatives. It's always looking for more resources, whether it's grant funding, whether it's making the long discussion about whether or not we're going to go with a bond funding or something like that. You always look and you always try and find something, even if something small. Like my clerk just did a grant program where she got $8,000 so that we could have a handicapped accessible door where our elections are. We didn't have the resources to do it ourselves, or it wasn't our priority, but hey, we found this money that, they're willing to pay for it, so we were able to get that done. So it would benefit those residents, because I do have an older community, so it's able to benefit our residents. It may not be the thing that is the biggest thing, but one of the things I've learned, and it's why I have a few trinkets in my office, sometimes something you do that's small or inconsequential to you and your day-to-day job can mean the world to someone else. And that's what makes this job rewarding. That's what makes being involved in government rewarding, is doing that thing that's maybe small to you, but it means the world to someone else.
Excellent. As we move toward concluding our time together today,
Mm-hmm.
what attributes and characteristics of note do you bring that may distinguish you from the other highly qualified candidates that have applied to be the next city manager of Charlotte?
Well, without knowing them personally, I can't contrast and compare do directly. But I think that anyone who's willing to put their name forward to be a city manager, I think has at least the one quality that's absolutely necessary, which is a desire to serve. They call it public service for a reason. And we're not running for elections, so you can't even call us politicians. So we're here for service. We're here to benefit the community we're working in. And again, I know that I am someone who, would be asking to come in here and do a job for 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever, but it's not infinite. All of our times here is limited. I know that whatever city I work in, I'm a temporary cog in the wheel. I'm just a spoke for a little bit, and that wheel's going to keep turning when I leave. No offense, but it'll keep turning when everyone here leaves. That's just the nature of government. We are a temporary steward of this community. And my ultimate goal and what drives me to do this is that as long as the time that I'm that spoke, that I do something that makes things a little bit better. Even if I never get credit for it, even if my name doesn't go on a plaque anywhere, knowing that I've done something to make somebody's life better, that's what makes it worth it for me. You know, we're doing a road project. Someone who said that, you know, oh, no one ever touches this side of my city because we're, you know, the council is on the other side and we're the poor side. Well, my Pacer rating said that road was one of the worst. My water study said I needed to go from a 2-inch main to an 8-inch main. So that's where I went. Not because of any political consideration, because I had the hard data to show it. And they said no one had ever paid attention to them. And I didn't do it because they said that's why. I said because the data told me to. But to them, they said, oh my God, someone finally is paying attention to us. Again, it may not be the why I did it, but if it made their lives better, then that's all the better. And like I said, you guys, you're the ones who go knock door to door, so you guys are the ones who get that feedback. I occasionally get the angry call, because one of my recurring jokes is no one calls City Hall because they're happy, but that's also part of the job, being that professional when someone's yelling at you and saying all kinds of not nice things to you.
I'm going to tap into your creative side. First, thank
Oh,
you
boy.
for coming, but I would like you to describe to me what you would consider the ideal park.
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that, or something that because I'll be honest, I am creative and aesthetic is not my strong suit. That's why when I was in my current position, I actually went out and we hired a Parks and Rec director who actually was in charge of programming because, again, it's not my area of strong suit, which I will say I think is one of my strengths is I'm willing to admit where I don't know and go and seek help or seek someone to improve it. But for me, what's my ideal park? First of all, it has to have somewhere where I can put a line in the water and hopefully catch a walleye, but that's me. I grew up in Macomb County, so I used to do that. So I like fishing, so that would be from, like, we have the Cass River, and we do a place, actually I'm working on a grant for a kayak launch. So that's, again, if we're asking my opinion. Whatever playscape stuff that will make my nephews not scream. So again, that's, you know, I don't have children, unfortunately, so I don't, you know, but I know, please don't put in that slide that's made out of metal that burned me when I was a kid, because please don't do that anymore. That was never fun. See, I'm getting some, yes, that's always good. But the other thing is also, there's a balance. There's a balance between equipment and just, you know, that quiet aspect of a park. Because I think there should be a balance. I think it should kind of be like a buffet. There should be something for everybody. For that person who wants the active thing, the splash pad, I sit on a board of the Disability Networks of Eastern Michigan, so I have a very big passion for making sure we have all-inclusive playground equipment. So stuff like that, so that everyone can enjoy it. But then also, you know, I'm a bookworm. Is there a quiet tree that says somewhere comfortable I can sit and read my book and not have, you know, anyone screaming and yelling? So I think writing a balance of that. Like, we have 5 parks in my community. You know, we have the main one that has the splash pad and the equipment and where our disc golf is, the volleyball court, the tennis court, and we keep putting stuff in there. It's also connected to our fairgrounds, so that's where, you know, the fair happens once a year. So it's a very, very busy park. We have Chippewa, which is right on the water, which is more, you know, a little bit more laid back, a little bit more relaxed, just kind of like that lazy river, you know, side thing. And then we have 3 neighborhood parks, which are basically just open green space for those neighbors to enjoy. So again, it's about balance. It's also about it may not be ideal for me, it's what's ideal for the people who live by there and what the community's needs are. So that's the other thing. I can tell you what I would like, but it's not all about me.
All right, thanks for coming.
No problem.
Tell me, what is your budget planning process? Who do you like to get involved in that process, and how do you get everyone behind the budget?
So again, my budget process is always, you know, the one thing I'll say is that, you know, I'm not a person who comes in and imposes. You know, I would like, you know, you work with the people and you work with the system that's in place and you try and, you know, improve it. But my budget process always starts with a department head meeting. It starts with me sitting down with the department heads and saying, okay, budget's coming up, start thinking about what you want, start thinking about the projects that we need to do this year. You know, like for me, I do a lot of work with my DPW because he covers, you know, roads and water and a lot of stuff. So it's like, okay, what roads are we working on? It's identifying those projects. And then once we get the information from the county about what our taxes are going to be, it's like, okay, what can we do? You know, the department heads submit their requests. They come to me and the treasurer. We sit down and we go through them and we say, okay, we can do this. We can't do that. We can do this. We can't do that. I have to say no to everybody at something, but I like to try and say yes to things if they are demonstrated that they need to be done. And it's also looking where you've been. You know, if you have a structural deficit, which from my review, I don't believe you have, but you know, if you have a structural deficit, you have to address that first. But if you don't have a structural deficit and you can look at, okay, what do we want to accomplish? What's the things, and it goes back to that, what's a must have and what's a would be nice to have? You know, I have to fix this water line because it's leaking all the time. But I'd like to fix this road because, you know, it's the main way through town and it's bumpy, but okay, I don't have enough money to do X. So instead of a reconstruct, maybe we just do a mill and overlay because it's less expensive. You know, like we just did crack sealing and seal coating on some of our parking lots because we didn't have the money to reconstruct some of them, but we said, okay, let's do this maintenance and let's work from there. But that's something else I'm very much identifying through the budget process, is making sure we're doing those maintenance things so that we don't have the big expenses creep up prematurely. So again, it's a lot of staff work. It's a lot of work with the person who, you know, with the people who manage the numbers day to day, and it's a lot of decision making on my half to say, okay, what can we do versus what we want to do. And one of the things I've learned working both in Congress, the state legislature, and in city government is it's never a straight line. It's always a zigzag, and there's always something that comes up or something that changes. And even when you pass a budget, it's, you know, you never know what's going to pop up. My first year, I'm literally 3 months into the job, and I get a notice that the media in our arsenic treatment plant has reached the end of its life, and it's not sucking up arsenic anymore. And I'm like, oh boy, here's a $750,000 expense I didn't recognize, but we worked through it, we took care of it, and now we got another 20 years. But that's when I also said, okay, this said it was supposed to last 15. Why are we doing this in year 18? Oh, well, it wasn't broken, so we didn't fix it. Okay, but we don't like emergencies. So that's also when you work on, you know, like your capital improvement plan to say, okay, this thing has a useful life of 10 years. Let's plan on replacing it in year 10 and not just say, oh, it's year 13, it's broken, we have to do an emergency. So it's also part of that long-term planning. You know, doing your capital improvement plan and looking towards the future as part of that as well. So and also I've been through the Asset Management Champions Program through the Michigan Infrastructure Council. So again, I'm a big believer in planning those things so that you can do smart replacement and try to avoid surprises. We're always gonna have surprises. But like I said, if something says it's gonna last 20 years, and you say, oh, we'll fix it when it's broken, and year 25 comes around and you didn't think about it, and all of a sudden you have an unexpected expense, well, that's also poor planning. So there's a balance there as well.
Just a quick, excuse me, quick question, because pretty important topic it was for us here. It kind of hit us, but we're in good shape now. Is all about MERS. You know, in your places of employment, have you had to deal with situations where you've been down and you've had to figure ways to get it up quick, and how did you do it? Or did you go to a place where they had a surplus and you were good to go? You could kind of coast along. Just looking for some insight.
I've been fortunate that actually hasn't been a problem for me. Like my city, actually, I was at a conference and our retirement plan, our defined benefit plan, because we moved off that years ago, our defined benefit plan, was actually funded, I think, at 133%. And the financial analyst looked at me and said, why are you so overfunded? Because they say it should be at 110, you know, to, you know, account for anything over your actuarials. So again, it's the weird thing that I actually had the opposite problem. It's like we actually had put too much in, which again, there is that balance. Now, if I was in the situation you're describing, again, never having done it, so I can't speak specifically to what I've done, but that's where it comes to prioritizing. You know, it comes down to, okay, we have to fund this. We have to make these hard decisions. So that's where it's like, okay, like I was talking about earlier, that's a have to. So you may have to sacrifice one of your would like tos. You know, like when I drove in here, you know, there may be a road that needs to be done, but okay, but you're so underfunded that, okay, well, maybe I need to pass that road off, or maybe you need to do something else with your general fund. You need to look at how to do that. So whether it's for MERS or anything else, the first thing you need to do is dive in the numbers. Now, I know when I went into politics, I was told there'd be no math, but someone lied to me. They also lied to me and said I wouldn't have a calculator my whole life, but I have one in my pocket right now on my phone, so my teachers lied to me. But it's about getting into those numbers and say, okay, how bad is it? How long do we have to fix it? And what's the plan to do that? So if it's something where they said, you need to get this into at 80% funded within 3 years, then you better figure out how much you need to pay and where it's coming from. But if you have a longer opportunity and you say, okay, we're at 90%, we need to get to 100, so let's take a 10-year outlook, then you need to take that outlook. It's similar to what I did when we were crunching the numbers for the wastewater project, because it's a 30-year bond. So we had to prove that we could afford it, that we could make the payments. So what me and the treasurer did and said, okay, we sit down, we look at it and say, okay, as long as the city is steadily increasing rates with rates of inflation, 3-4%. As long as that happens and we don't have any major disasters, then we can handle this. But it's that slow and steady. You need to stay on that slow and steady course. And that's how it worked for us. If it was something where you had to be a little more drastic, then, that's where, push comes to shove, you got to be more drastic. So, and I know Michigan is rife with these problems, and I know there are 100 strategies from 100 different people. And one of the things I would say is, if I had that problem, the first place I would go is probably the manager's listserv and please, okay, what did y'all do? Because I need ideas, because I'm smart enough to know I don't know everything. I think it was Socrates who said, true knowledge is knowing you know nothing. I don't know everything. So I'd also lean on those people who know and who've been through that to say, okay, what are your ideas? There's another phrase I like, taking from one person is stealing, taking from a bunch of people is research. I do my research.
Thank you.
Scott, finally, is there anything else you would like the mayor and council to know before we end our discussion, or do you have any questions?
The first thing I'd like to say is, successful or not, thank you. It's always a pleasure to come to a community and to extol the virtues both of myself and of the place that I'd be looking to come. So I thank you for having me out here. Again, no matter which way, I hope that whoever you pick works out well for you. Whether if it's me, I'd like to say it will be, but again, I'm trying not to be too egomaniacal. But the only thing besides that is that I am a person who is, when I throw myself into something, I throw myself into it completely. It's the other reason why I can't be involved in every civic organization, because they see someone, they like, oh, new person here, you do this, this, and then I have no free time, and I'm losing sleep. So if you choose me, you'd be choosing someone who would be dedicated, who would be focused on every issue as best I can. Like I said, you can't solve all problems. If I were to leave my job tomorrow, there's stuff undone, and that's true no matter how long I stay. If I stay in Cairo or Charlotte or Timbuktu for 40 years, there will still be stuff that will be undone. It's the nature of government. It's that temporary spoke thing I spoke about earlier. But while I'm here, you're going to get someone who's going to wake up every day and work every day to solve as many problems as I can. And when the new ones come, try and solve those. And then one day, there'll be problems. There'll be someone else's problem, because that's just the way it works. So I like how I'm getting a few pops from the audience. At least I deal with stress sometimes with humor. So that's another thing you're going to be getting from me, is I deal with stress sometimes with humor. So I don't tell knock jokes or anything that corny, but.
Thank you, Scott, for putting yourself out there tonight, and thank you for
Thank you, James, for this, and council members, thank you. Staff, thank you for being here. I know it's Thursday night. I'm sure we'd all like to be at home. I know that. I've heard from my staff we have to have late meetings. That sometimes it's always not the first place we want to be, but it's the job, and we respect it, and we respect the service. So again, to the council members, to the staff who's here, to the audience, thank you for taking the time to care, and thank you for taking the time to dedicate yourself to your city. Thank you.
We'll take another 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 20:38.
Thank you very much.
This can work. So tonight, you will not be extending a job offer to anybody. Tonight, what you would do is identify a lead candidate. Once you identify a lead candidate, that begins the background investigation portion, where we do a verification of criminal and financial, a deeper validation of all the credentials, which I've already done most of that. I don't anticipate any issue with any of the candidates here tonight. I know them all very well. Then I would work on I would help negotiate a contract on behalf of the city. I would get a draft contract in form and get it to the mayor and city attorney for final review, and then that would come back to you at a later meeting for final approval. So with that said, you have a couple options here. One, we could have a deliberation, or at any point, someone can make a motion to name somebody the lead candidate. If you believe there's a consensus of who the lead candidate was, somebody can make a motion to identify a lead candidate. It's really how you guys want to proceed from here.
So how does council want to see? Do you want, if you make a motion, then you're going to be stuck to talking about what that motion is. If you want to just discuss candidates, we can just go down the line and you can make your points. Or if somebody has a different idea, that's fine too. You have a different idea? What do you want to do? Discuss?
I prefer your second option, the one where we just have a discussion.
Then we'll start with you then.
Consider
How's
voting
that?
there. Well, I got some, not a lot, but some feedback from a few different people. And so for me personally, I feel like, there's a candidate I feel like I identify with that I feel like would be a great option, but there's also a question about fit. Who's the right fit? Who's the right person based on the team? That person doesn't need to be my best friend. Clearly, they're going to be working with staff most of the time. So that's at least where I'm at, where I have to consider. I feel like for me, it's a choice between candidate 1 and candidate 3. Although I liked all the candidates.
Mr. Chin, do you have any comment?
I think I'm with Anthony. 1 and 3 are my top.
Okay.
Well, that was too fast. I must say that candidate number 2 would have made a fine best friend for the next 20 years of my life. But I agree on candidate 1, and I would say, I don't know why, but I'd lean toward 1 and 2, but with my emphasis on the first.
Okay.
You know, there are two that interviewed definitely better in my way of thinking, viewing them as employees of us as a council and those that are residents of the city. One might be more energetic than anyone I know, and the other one may be kind of one of those people who just kind of fits the mold. But at the same time, it's one of those things that, although they'd be the employee of the council and taking direction from the constituents that we represent, they also have to work very well with the staff. And so it's tough, though, because I think there are people who interview really well, but yet that's not truly who they are. And so I think more than anything, it's actually viewing the body language, which is great that we have it all on video and that you can observe it in that fashion. So even though they may be high-strung or maybe too mild, their body speaks actually louder than the words that come out of their mouth. And so we may envision them as actually being, a good fit or not, but day-to-day is much more than just these few 30 minutes or so that we spent with them. And I like the fact that we stuck them with questions that they may not have envisioned, but yet again, they're not brand new to this. They probably had a good idea what they'd be up against and how to answer that to maybe make it to the next level. So I personally think 1 and 3 are the best choices right now, but I think we need to have a little more discussion. So that's what I've got so far.
Along the same lines as, everybody that, has talked already, make sure that it's a fit for the department heads that work with the city manager day in, day out. And then we, as a council, will have to have some interactions, along the way, to point, that a lot of comfort level, you know, at the table with, you know, 14 eyeballs staring at somebody, you know, is kind of unnerving as a panel interview. I think, you know, they all handled themselves very well, but I'm looking at candidates 1 and 3 as well, just based on the way they interviewed, they answered the questions. You know, their leadership style seems to be eager and wanting to let the department heads do their specialty and run their departments and be supportive, you know, of that kind of management style.
Oh, me already? I would concur that, I think before I say anything about any of them, just listening to all 3 of them and some of the different experiences that they've had and how they've dealt with them, and some of them are pretty tough situations, and to to just sit here and listen to those experiences, I know I've certainly gained a much better perspective of what city managers go through just in this little bit. It's so wide and varied. So I thought all 3 of them interview-wise were super. I think we made the right 3 choices when we had our meeting to decide where to go. Candidate 1 and 3, I believe, stand out. Just based on the back and forth and the questions, plus kind of the pop quizzes that everyone here threw at them. One thing I looked for when I'm talking to someone or when I own my business and when I interviewed with them is eye contact. Eye contact for me is just huge. It's not a qualification, but it certainly is a trait. And first impressions kind of mean a lot to me. I think every time I've went against my first impression, I've usually been wrong. So I'm going to take that into consideration. And 1 and 3 both were good at that. One of the things that I was impressed with was, you know, I know my MERS question was kind of off base and maybe I should have sharpened it a little bit. But for a candidate not to ever have had to deal with it and actually be able to sit there and tell me how they were going to deal with it and knowing what we've went through, he made complete sense. And I'm like, this is good. I'm looking for energetic. I don't want someone that sits at their desk and just you. I want someone that gets out and works with the department heads and is seen and out in the community and doesn't have any shyness to them. I want them to be a part of this team, the process that moves this city forward. I think we've accomplished a lot in 2.5 years. But I think we have a long way to go, and we got to make sure that we make the right choice to accelerate that. So I'm with most of you with 1 and 3 at this point.
I think your number 2 candidate dropped out then.
Yeah, he just fell out of the, so let's assume
Down
that
to
we're,
discussing 1 and 3.
yeah, that we're discussing 1 and 3. My question is, does the phone call regarding number 3 affect anyone? Because that was Kent McDonald of Big Boy Manager, basically disparaging candidate number 3 as a politician. Did it cause doubt?
Go ahead, Anthony.
That's actually something I kind of threw down because to have a citizen call in and inquire about that, I think is important. He took the time to do it. And one of the things that I looked for when listening to him was he political in any way? And it seems to me that it was the opposite. He seemed professional. There's nothing in any of his answers that I could point to that would seem political. He seemed well read. Even quoted people from different ideologies, and so I didn't actually see that as an issue. But I am thankful that was pointed out because this job is a tough job, and you can't have, even amongst us or leaders, seeming overly political. So I
Right.
was thankful for the question, but he seemed very professional to me.
Madam Mayor, or Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry, I work for
ahead.
Mayor. Just to chime in, I was aware of that phone call. I was briefed on that earlier today as well, some of the conversation going on with the political aspect. If you look at what he did in the legislature, a significant portion of city managers in the state of Michigan have previous policy office experience. This is not a campaign person. This is someone who worked for the actual legislative offices doing constituent services and governing. Most would view that type of work history as an attribute because, as you could tell by the interview with candidate 3, he knew how to get funding. He understood how Lansing worked. He understood how the cogs of the bureaucracy works, whether it's Eagle or MEDC. So in most of the searches I've done, people who have worked in legislative experience in their early years is seen as a pro. It's not seen as political. If I saw campaign work on here, he's constantly running campaigns. That is not what this individual is doing. He was working as a policy office. And if you actually look at the rules of the legislature, they cannot engage in political activity while serving the legislature.
I just want to be clear, I was not disqualifying the candidate in my mind at all. I, like Anthony, I saw exactly the same thing. I'm looking for something specific and didn't find it.
Yep, absolutely.
Mr. Chin, I was still over here if you wanted to talk about any more, about 1 or 3.
We were talking about the fact that all of the candidates are qualified, but in different ways. So I was looking at what is the best match for what I think we need to lead the ship. So, and that's where, I think number one, we'll work with staff, we'll work with council, we'll be out there with our constituents, and so again, I don't think he'll be hiding in the office or not engaging. Some of the answers to the questions, I've talked about capital improvement plans, I've talked about strategic plans, and the need, and I think all of them talked about that and their answers, and I'm glad to hear that because we still haven't moved off the dime with getting that where I think we need to have that in place for us to plan our future out instead of being reactive to the emergencies, crises, et cetera. When I first got on council, I told my wife, I went home, I said, in a simple word, Charlotte is just in crisis because they haven't planned ahead from that standpoint, and some of the things they got hit with, especially the pension problem, certainly they weren't prepared, and a lot of cities weren't prepared for that from that standpoint. But I think my biggest fear, not seeing their age or whatever, I thought, I hope our top candidates weren't ready to retire real soon here, like our last one, because that kind of bit us on the, what from that side. He was a great, and not to take anything from Rob, but, he did tell us that he would hope that this was going to be his last job before retirement, and he just did it a lot sooner than what we had hoped from that standpoint. But I think he laid a pretty good foundation for us from that standpoint. And I think that the idea, and I think the fact that he wants to get engaged, but he also knows his limitations, and so I'm going to get involved as much as I can, but I also have a family, and I kind of respect that, being the father of 5. So from that standpoint.
Mr. Brumman? We're discussing 1 and 3.
Yeah, sure. So I think that it's really tough. This is kind of just mulling over this potential employee of us as a council, knowing though that our terms are limited because we're coming up on it, hoping that the staff is not a turnover, hoping that whoever we hire is here for some time. But these are all hopes, honestly. I mean, when people choose to change careers, there's no, like, unless you have a real retention, there's no way of knowing whether they're going to stay for any great length of time. So the only thing I can say is that when we get to that point, we have to lay out something that is enticing, that hopefully has some ramifications for someone to jump ship early. And if they were older, and then, age is one of those things, we can't discriminate against it anyway, or any other thing for that matter, is that there's no way of knowing. All we can do is try to work together, whoever we choose. And so right now I'm still kind of torn. I mean, I've talked with different people. They have different views, but then again, I don't think we have a real good feel of either one of the two people, one or three, given what little bit we have. We're going to make an educated decision, stay within our lane, do the best that we can to have that person work for us and with those that they have to work with. So I'm just saying that still I'm not for sure with one or other on my end. Go ahead.
Mr. Newman?
Yeah, we're in a tough spot. Both are extremely qualified, got experience, in different realms of leadership and different, styles. A lot of them say, I'm gonna, let department heads do, what department heads do. I'm gonna sit back and, grow my staff and, and that sort of thing. One thing nobody likes is micromanagement and somebody, they're second guessing every step that you do, and that sort of thing. I think energetic wise, candidate 3, seemed to, be a little more boisterous and, confident in what he was presenting and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, both of them are definitely qualified.
I think we're in a great spot because I think we have two fantastic candidates. I don't think we can literally go wrong either way, but we ultimately have to make that decision. And I know some of the issues that have been on council even before I became a member. Look how long the infrastructure can was kicked down the road in this city. Obviously, we're dealing with it. Trying to get CIPs put into place. So we actually have plans and we have parts on the shelves and we have things rather than the emergencies that cost us 4 and 5 times what it would have. Probably the biggest thing that I heard that I really did not expect was I like to educate and promote from within. I think that's huge. Giving you get people that hire here that are new. Maybe they're a very rookie to the job, and they get a chance as they progress to learn through, perhaps get some certificates, whatever it may be. Who knows? There might come a time when, rather than having to go through a whole search for a new department head if one retires, we might already have one in waiting. I think that is forward planning and looking. A big savings to the city. We have to stop this rotating door. And I think we have the right people. I think we've got that rotating door just about stopped. And hopefully we're ready to put the screws in it and weld it shut. I think we have great people. But the educate and promote from within was a biggie for me. I never expected to hear it. I never thought about it. And it just slapped me upside the head when he did. So in that case, I'm gonna lean towards 3 a little bit. I love the motivation. I love forward thinkers, and I love people that can think on their feet and good communicators. And I don't think, again, with either one, I don't think we're gonna ever have a problem with communication. We're all gonna know what's going on. But those are certainly the important things for me, along with the chain of command. That's something that we had some, myself included, had some issues with. And we have solved that. We know we have a process of what we've all sort of agreed on and what we do. And it's certainly streamlined things, it's eliminated problems, And we work much better together. We do a lot more work for our citizens this way. So
You probably
that's what I
wouldn't
got.
make any comment, would you? And you've watched a lot of interviews, but you probably don't want to put yourself in a bad position, right?
Are you asking my opinion?
Yeah.
I'll give it, I know, I give it when asked. I think you have 3 good candidates. I think they're all qualified. There was one thing that stuck out at me as someone who's been a professional manager in communities like Charlotte. There was only one candidate who talked about actually becoming a member of your community.
Right.
There was one candidate who said,
I need a real estate agent.
it's not required, but I've been a city manager, been the manager in 3 different communities, was an assistant in one community. At one time, I ran 2 communities. I lived in the community I served, and I went and served as additionally in a second community. That was a job to me. When I became a part of the community, it was intimate with me. So when someone says they want to become a part of the community, they're willing to invest that sticks out at me. And I only heard one person talk about how they wanted to become a part of the community, not a visitor, not a guest, but to become a part of the community. That stuck out with me. Take it for what it's worth.
I have something.
Yeah.
I do. Well, based on what my comrades at the end just said, I feel like we have one candidate that is steady and patient, and the other one is innovative and energetic. And as an innovative and energetic dude, I'd like to hang around steady, patient people to chill me out. On the other hand, my question to you all is like, what do we need as a city more, steady and patient or innovative and energetic? And I would selfishly argue innovative and energetic at this point. So that puts me in candidate 3, despite what I might have felt 15 minutes ago.
Do you have a question?
I want to hear you say something.
Right.
I'm the mediator. I just,
I would be willing to nominate a candidate if the discussion's done. I don't want to overjump anybody though, because I hate it when it's done to me.
Councilman Brummett was waving.
Yeah, I know.
did you have something, Jeff? Yes.
My only thing is yeah, that, so when you read the beginning of our agenda, it states on there some of the things that are legally binding. It also states some things that, we can't question, we can't ask. But when they're disclosed, such as the question or the statement that you just made, that someone actually said that they were going to have a real estate agent desire, that means something at least, because there's people that have expressed numerous times in our other searches in the past, when I've been at the podium, it'd be great if we had somebody live in the community. But we've had other people who said they wouldn't, they won't, there's no way, and we can't require it. But when someone discloses that in public and says that before all of us, it should say something about that person. Not only have they already heard all the things that we can't shadow when it comes to what we have to offer or what challenges are before us, or anything that we might try to discount on the number of people that we've had sit in that seat previously, no matter how you want to tag them, this person's actually willing to become a resident of the community, or at least state that on the record. At the same time, we have people that have a family and have the commitment of a family, and they're willing to take a job on that they know is a pretty big commitment. So, we're still at 1 and 3, but I think that no matter how this person in number 3 interviewed, that may not be the exact person that you think. They may not really want to live here, but they stated that. They may not be nearly as high-strung as what they presented in their interview or as a go-getter as they are, but it's kind of hard to discount that. And when, again, the eyes speak louder than the words that are spoken, the body language screams whatever it screams, the fact that they want to try to make change and they recognize that there's at least some input from the audience that we have or the people, it actually goes against the fact that somebody decided to choose to read up on them and make a determination based on what it is that the internet says about this person when they took the time to come out here and interview. So although it might not be right, I may actually be interested in making that nomination and overshadowing Mr. Rodriguez. But that wouldn't be right, I guess, necessarily, but I could actually make the motion too. unless there's any other comments.
You just said you wanted to discuss.
Yeah, I did.
He deferred to you, so.
Yeah, well then,
Don't take his thunder then.
yeah, no, I don't want to do that. That would be bad. That's why we work together up here.
Yeah, I need you later to fix that tree I have, okay? So I can't make you mad over there.
Are you ready to make some determination then?
I would personally like to nominate candidate number 3 for discussion and a vote. Specifically, candidate number 3.
If you got an alternate,
And number 1 as an alternate.
that would be
I would second that motion.
moved and seconded. Now we have to,
What was the motion?
no. There wasn't any motion. So now we have a motion and a second. So we have a motion to nominate candidate number 3 with candidate number 1 as the alternate in case the first would deny or not pass the background check, I would assume. That'd be what that, but we're blessed now that we need to discuss, if you want to discuss anything, it has to be about the nomination of 3 and 1.
I mean, we're the team. We're looking for a quarterback, so I hope that we all agree on one. I think if we do that, it's a win all the way down the line, from top to bottom, from bottom to top, from neighborhood to neighborhood. This city gets a lot stronger, quicker, even though we have a fantastic interim. I wish he would stay, but I know he's not going to. The golf course is crying his name. I can hear it.
Discussion?
Yeah, I think what I heard from council is that they liked all the candidates. We tried to narrow it down a little bit. But I seem to sense a favoring towards number 3. That's why I nominated number 3. Some qualities: very quick and confident, pretty knowledgeable. Talked about not micromanaging, willing to take responsibility. Talked about promoting from within. When we got to the budget question, his emphasis was on department heads. It's very common for city managers to try to buff us up, but the reality is the department heads are the ones who have to get into the nitty gritty. And of course, he said early in his comments, he works for council, he's hired by council. But, I've been through a lot of budget processes, and when it gets down to it, when I started this nearly 5 years ago, I thought I'd be in there writing X's and moving things. And guess what? Turns out the people who are the department heads at the end of the day know where the money's got to go. The manager knows where the money's got to go. You got to make some priority direction decisions, but you trust your experts. So those are some of the things I liked as to why I nominated him. So, but
I'll throw one more thing in. One of the things was he was very proactive in finding funding. And, I will tell you, I mean, our department heads, I will single out Stephanie, reaching out and finding these dollars, or at least where we're applying for them, to help accomplish some of the things that she feels that we need. And obviously we feel the same way. I think having someone in that seat that offers some additional effort to that process just helps us even more. And trying to delve out of politics, the fact with the legislative experience and knowing how things work and how the system goes, I think that saves a lot of red tape if you're out trying to find some legislative dollars. I think that would be a huge help to this city.
We done?
Yes.
And we'll have a roll call vote by the clerk, and don't start with me because I don't want to have any influence on anybody.
Great. Chin,
No.
Rummett,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Fullerton.
Yes.
So you have 6 yeses and 1 no.
So Mr. Freed has his, and now,
Yep. So
can you, yeah, go through like we talked about?
Yep. So I will reach out to the candidate. I will begin communicate with him what he needs in a possible contract. I will be discussing directly with Mr. Fulton as well on what the needs are. I'll get a draft contract to the city. From there, you will send it to your city attorney and for final review, and then it will come back to you for a vote. So we'll get the 4 corners of that agreement put to place. I can tell you now that you've made your decision. You have made a wonderful decision. I know him well. I have called and vetted him before. The people who work with him enjoy working with him. The people in the community enjoy him. He is well liked. He will be able to clear a background check, no problems. I think the staff will enjoy working with him as well once they get to know him. He's a very honest and good man.
So the next question everybody will have is time frame.
I can get this.
What do you think? I mean,
When's your next meeting?
the 4th Monday? No, it'd be on, is it after the Memorial Day? So is it the 26th?
We could easily have a contract to you at that time.
Think you can,
Oh, yeah.
think you can have a contract
I'll get this turned around in a week.
available for review
Yep.
before that?
Yeah, I can get this turned around into your city attorney in the next couple days.
And so after our attorney looks at it, then you can send it to the council
Yep.
before the next meeting or get it to the clerk, never do it?
Yep, absolutely.
So we know that, Mr. Rodriguez.
I'm just, in the past, the way we've done this is, and I don't know if you want to do this or not, we put together basically a committee to work with Mr. Freed on the contract and then bring that all to the council. Is that something you want to do again? Or do you think it's even necessary? Can you just get something?
In talking with Mr. Freed, he's done it so many times, he's got these contracts that have been reviewed and approved. He said it was just be pretty much a waste of our time.
Yeah, the only question I have is just if you can, getting it advanced, 3 council members who are in agreement and like the contract that's then recommended to the rest of council is a really strong starting point before it comes to us and too many people have different ideas. That was the only thought I had, but
Well, we can try it this way and see how it works. Mr. Freed's done this before this way?
Yeah, so the good news is we're not reinventing the wheel. You have a manager's contract that Rob had. That's an excellent starting point. It defines all your benefits. It defines what you're willing. So to be quite frank, we're pretty much just going to move off of Rob's.
And we approved
we
that.
all approved that one.
Yeah, so it's going to be relatively
New members, but
the same. The salary may not be as high, but everything else will most likely be the same. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel here. You got a good contract in place, a good form.
But there are provisions in Rob's contract that I'm not sure I'm comfortable.
And I recognize those provisions. I know exactly what you're talking about, and we can get those
Right.
removed. I intend to remove those. Those were some incentives for that specific candidate. Yep,
We're all interested in moving forward quickly.
absolutely.
Fly fishing season opens, or,
Yeah.
that's always been this thing. Whenever the flies start coming. So do you think we're missing anything else?
No, I think you made a good decision. I don't think you made a bad decision. I think you made a good decision. I think we offer a 1-year guarantee on our contracts. I don't think for one moment that will even be an issue here.
Great. Okay. Is there any other comments from the council, starting at the left? Any comments? It's on the agenda.
Just very,
You don't have to have any.
I'm just looking forward to moving forward. We've got a really nice wave going, and let's take every advantage of this opportunity that we've hopefully will sign and seal the deal, and let's rock and roll this city forward.
Mr. Newman.
I just think, again, we're doing good things, we're moving in the right directions and making good choices. Sometimes those choices that we make don't make everybody happy. But they're hard nonetheless, so, but that's why we have 7 of us up here to have an agreement on that, so.
Mr. Brummett.
I didn't really want to see this day come because I like Vince, and I think that we're doing well with Vince. But at the same time, knowing that you sit in this position and you have hard decisions to make, it was definitely tough between the two candidates that we decided upon. I mean, I only saw the two candidates as our options, and unfortunately, had to make a decision. And I think that, if there's any challenges along the way, that's our job to make sure that staff can work with whoever is managing them. Because again, we are supposed to run the manager on how we want, as a whole, things to run as a city. So it will give us a new opportunity to keep our noses where they belong and move the city in the right direction with those that are supposed to be moving the city that way.
I just want to thank you for the process. I thought that went very well. Thank you.
I'll put you on my reference list.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for your work
Mr. Chair.
on there. And I have my own personal reasons for not, but again, I think number 3 is well qualified. He's got far less experience as a city manager, which is one of them, and the other one is probably very obvious to you because you've done this for so long. So
Don't take this the wrong way, folks, but I hope to not do business with you for a very long time.
Keep us on your Christmas.
Yeah, I hope to never see you for a very long
Nothing
time.
else from Anthony, and I guess I'd just like to say that we got to make sure that, if the contract comes back or something, we're interested in getting something done, because we went through this, the time he's talking about, and we changed, and we met in here in the council, and we spent about 2 months doing nothing. And it was very frustrating. That's why this is a better way to do this. We got to, it looks like we could have a contract by the next council meeting.
Yes.
And then the time starts kicking. What do those guys usually get? You would know, Vince. Usually 45 to 60. So it's still a couple months after we get a contract signed, at least.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So we'll be lucky to have somebody here by August. Yeah.
You may get lucky.
Okay, need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Yeah. It's quite entertaining.